Nathaniel first read the message from Christine Powell, asking for a convenient time to see Aria. His gaze then settled on Aria's response, where she mentioned needing to discuss the matter with her husband before getting back to Christine. A smile tugged at his lips. He absolutely loved it when she referred to him as her husband, especially to their mutual friends, rather than just Nathan. He glanced up to meet her eyes, his own crinkling in amusement. "Are you quite done?" Aria asked. Noticing his expression, he shrugged in response and returned his gaze to her messages. There was another one from the administrative department about a scheduled visit from the New York State Office of Professional Medical Conduct. Nathaniel's brows furrowed at the information. He saw that Aria had replied she would need to discuss it with Rowan before confirming a date, but something about it struck him as odd. The OPMC, part of the New York State Department of Health, was responsible for investigating complaints against physicians and physician assistants. If there was any serious perceived illegal conduct, such as violations of medical ethics or legal standards, the OPMC would lead the investigation before involving larger entities like the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the New York State Department of Health, the District Attorney's Office, and medical ethics committees. Nathaniel's mind raced through everything that had been happening at Evergreen Memorial Hospital over the past few weeks, from Julia's assault to Sean's bullet wound to Henri Cavalier showing up with 2 hearts and live donors. Anyone from Ricky's men to the Camorra could target Aria to get to him. If they had access to all that information, they could use it against them, potentially damaging Aria's reputation and career and tarnishing Evergreen Memorial Hospital's standing. The issue of Henry showing up with organs alone was enough to cause an uproar. Nathaniel glanced back at Aria, who was absent-mindedly stroking his scalp while listening to something Ethan was saying. She didn't seem bothered by it, and why would she be? She had no idea how malicious people could be. She was just trying to save lives, but the world was far more twisted than she could imagine. Nathaniel didn't like this new development, and hated that he hadn't been paying closer attention because of the damn Camorra issue. Speaking of the Camorra, he shifted his focus to what was happening at the other end of the earphone, judging by what he could hear. The onslaught of attacks was still ongoing. He clenched his jaw, his brows knitting together. He knew Sean had asked Tom to accompany him to Naples to help sort out any pending legal issues and secure Anne's inheritance, which was their family home. Nathaniel thought that might have to be put on hold, or Tom would have to hire someone else to handle it, because this whole scheduled inspection needed to be closely examined before it turned into something that could bite them in the asses later. "Tell me, Nate, is that Aria's phone in your hand?" Anna asked from across the room, drawing Nathaniel's attention. He looked in her direction and smiled. Anna shook her head at him. "So you're still your possessive self, classic Nate," Ethan quipped. "Shut up, Ethan," Nathaniel replied in a deep, low voice. "That's an invasion of privacy, though," Anna pointed out, then turned to Alex, who was watching the exchange with a lazy smile on his face. When Anna glared at him, he quickly sat up. "Don't you think that's an invasion of privacy, Alex?" Anna directed at him. She is his wife," Alex said hesitantly, choosing each word with great care. "Whoa, so you mean to say it's okay?" Anna pressed. Yeah," Alex responded. Ethan's low chuckling grew louder. "Gosh, man, you shouldn't have answered that one. Now you're in hot water," he quipped. Alex threw a confused glance at Aria, who was also chuckling. "So you're going to be as possessive as Nate, then?" Anna continued. "He's always been possessive, Anna. He's just more subtle about it. Unlike Nate, who's completely shameless," Ethan quipped, making Nathaniel roar with laughter. By now, Alex looked like he was fighting for his life. "Please don't compare Alex to Nathan. Nathan needs an exorcism," Aria chimed in, laughing, all the while not stopping her gentle strokes on Nathaniel's scalp. Nathaniel felt thoroughly spoiled. "Don't pretend you didn't enjoy it. You loved seeing me completely smitten with you," Nathaniel teased. Aria's heart swelled with emotion. Her face grew warm, and she playfully stuck out her tongue at him, which only made him laugh more. He loved how he could still make her feel shy, and the warmth in her eyes felt almost surreal. He could easily imagine a few things he would have done if they were alone. Pushing those thoughts aside, he turned his attention to their friends and said, "Go easy on the poor guy, Anna." A couple shouldn't keep anything from each other. It's absolutely ridiculous. You allow someone into your life, your heart, your body, and then you think access to each other's phone should be off limits like some sacred object? Couples who think that way have no business being couples in the first place. It's absurd, Nathaniel declared. Anna's face grew pensive as she chewed on the corner of her lips, still giving Alex a thoughtful look. I suppose Nate is right. Except, of course, when one of the partners is abusive and manipulative, Anna said. And why the hell would you want to be with such a person? Ethan countered. It's not like it's written on people's foreheads, Blackwood. Anna fired back. The two launched into an argument, and Alex visibly relaxed. Nathaniel chuckled, watching the exchange, then shut his eyes briefly as Aria pressed a kiss to his forehead. He flicked his gaze up to meet her smiling face and tapped at his lips, silently asking her to kiss him there. When she lowered her head to meet his, he whispered, Don't schedule a date for the OPMC inspection yet. Let Tom, Andrew, and I look into it first. Okay, baby? Aria's brows furrowed, her eyes darting as she pondered his request, wondering why he was asking this. But she nodded in acceptance regardless. Should I be worried? Aria whispered, giving him a concerned look. I'm not sure, but it seems to have come out of nowhere, don't you think? He replied, keeping his voice low. I didn't really think much of it, Aria admitted. Given everything happening, the OPMC request seemed ordinary at first, but with Nathaniel's prompting, some things started to make sense. For example, Harrison Buck, the head of legal, had been absent from work for about a week, according to HR. Whenever unusual incidents involving patients occurred, requiring authorities to be informed, Aria usually filed a report and sent it to him, such as when Henry had arrived with human organs. Of course, damn it, she thought, cursing internally. Such a situation could spell trouble for the hospital if it turned out to be illegal. The hospital should have reported Henry to the police, but with Nathaniel's involvement, she had only filed the report about the organs. Perhaps that's what this was about. Talk to me, Nathaniel urged, his eyes reflecting concern over Aria's hesitation. We have this guy at the hospital, Harrison Buck, who handles legal matters. I sent him a report about Henri Cavalier's showing up with human organs, asking him to investigate. Even though the organs had approval of legitimacy, anything can be forged. It's standard procedure to notify legal, who then investigate and involve the police or FBI if necessary, Aria explained. Okay, maybe we need to check in with Buck to see how the case was handled, Nathaniel suggested. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. According to HR, he's been out for about a week, Aria said. A week, huh? When did this request for inspection come in? Nathaniel asked, trying to determine if there was a connection and if Buck might be involved. 2 days after he stopped coming to the hospital, Aria replied, after some mental calculations. She then let out a deep sigh. Gosh, I hope it is not what I'm thinking, because honestly, I need to start planning for my delivery. I can't have that on top of everything else. Aria whispered in evident frustration. Nathaniel cupped her jaw, making her look into his eyes. You trust me, don't you? He asked, softly but firmly. Aria nodded without hesitation. Then leave it to me, he assured her. Aria nodded with a sigh. Just then, a loud warning blared through his earphone, and Nathaniel held his breath, quickly shifting his attention back to the situation at the other end of the line. Back at Il Rifugio dell'Ombra Island in Italy, Andrew and Charles navigated the narrow hallways with determined strides. In each corridor, Andrew repeatedly called out to Jake and the others, urgently shouting their names. Jake, Aiden, Anton, Jordan, Sean, do you copy? But no response came. As they reached a hallway, a tall man armed with a knife came at them. Charles immediately recognized the dagger. It was Anton's. He rushed past Andrew, swerved to dodge the man's attack, and buried his own dagger in the man's side. Pulling it out, he turned to see the man pause in his tracks. Andrew, who was now face-to-face with the tall attacker, grabbed him by the front of his jacket and shoved him hard against the wall. Charles picked up the fallen dagger and passed it to Andrew. Where the hell is the owner of this dagger? Andrew growled close to the man's face. The man swallowed hard, seemingly dazed from the wound Charles had inflicted. Andrew put the knife to his throat and snarled. Last chance! The man, choking, started to slip against the rocky wall and pointed down the hallway. Charles, now pressed against the side wall, glanced in that direction before returning his gaze. Suddenly, a loud yell echoed through the hallway. Is that all you've got? Come on, it was Sean Cavalier. Andrew thought he sounded completely unhinged. Andrew signaled to Charles to watch his back as he hurried in that direction. But as he reached the end of the narrow hallway, he opened a door and nearly got his head riddled with bullets. He quickly retreated. Sean, Jake, Aiden, Anton, Jordan, he called out, hoping they could hear him above the sound of gunfire. Hold your fire! Charles heard Jake's voice and let out a sigh of relief, resting his back against the wall, his massive chest heaving. God help me, I thought I heard Andrew, they heard Aiden say. Charles let out a sharp laugh. You guys want to get out of here. I kind of hate being this deep underground, Jake quipped, still hugging the side wall and not daring to peer out again. Holy hell, it is Andrew! Anton yelled. Andrew, man, am I happy to hear you? He cried out in his usual clownish self. Show your face, damn it, Jake demanded. Andrew peered out, grinning. Down the hall, he could see the 5 men covered in blood and gore, but alive. Doubting Thomas, Charles teased. You guys need a ride? Andrew quipped as Charles stepped out, standing in plain view for the men to see him. They all cheered his name. Charlie. Charles and Andrew shook with laughter. I swear, if any one of you cries, I'm going to record it, Charles teased. Yeah, well, it's a good thing I'm only reacting to someone peeling onions, 'cause damn, Jordan said, adding, It's good to see you too. We might need to get out fast, though, Anton interjected, his thick Irish accent surfacing. The other men let out a string of expletives as Anton staggered on his feet. I think he's been shot, Aiden announced with concern. The 2nd time this month. What rotten luck, Anton quipped in an Irish brogue. That's the least of your problems. Try explaining that to Dr. Hawthorne, Aiden reminded him, making him groan loudly. Jake, trailing behind the others, watched Sean, who was standing in a corner fixated on the body of Anne Cavalier's child. Jake had conflicted feelings about Sean and couldn't wait to get rid of him before he did something that would provoke Jake into losing control. Jake's brows then furrowed in bemusement when he thought he saw a glint of tears on Sean's face just before his chest heaved. Sean then turned and trudged past them, stopping to give Andrew and Charles a nod of gratitude. But as he took a few steps, he fell to his knees. Andrew and Charles, who were the closest, rushed to grab him before he hit the rocky ground. Aiden and Jordan flanked Anton while Andrew and Charles helped with Sean. Jake hurried to the front, leading the team out with his gun drawn. Nathaniel's heart pounded in his ears as he listened intently to the events unfolding in Naples. Relief washed over him when Andrew and Charles finally located Jake and his team, but his tension remained. They were still trapped underground in the criminal's den. Arya gently stroked his eyebrows, pulling his attention back to her. He snapped his eyes to meet hers. She gazed lovingly into his eyes, her perfectly shaped eyebrows lifting in silent inquiry, seeking reassurance that all was well. Nathaniel hesitated before nodding, not wanting to lie to her. He needed to be certain his men were truly safe before giving her a firm answer. They're working on it, he whispered, his voice low and husky. Arya sighed, her brows knitting in worry. It's going to be fine, babe, he reassured her, hoping he was right. Back at Il Refugio dell'Ombra Island in Italy, Andrew and Charles were helping to carry Sean, while Aiden and Jordan supported Anton. This left Jake to defend the team as they navigated the long, rocky corridors. At every turn, Jake shouted, "Stop, survey, go, go, go!" In the 3rd corridor, he saw men rushing towards them. Raising a fist to signal the team to halt, Jake launched a merciless attack, firing in quick succession and taking them out before yelling, "Go!" This pattern continued until they reached the carved stairs that twisted upward to the surface. Jake quickly surveyed the area. The stairs had no protective cover, so if they ascended, they would need to be fast and pray for no more surprises. Otherwise, they'd be sitting ducks. Charles, do you think you can carry Sean alone? Andrew, who was also assessing their next huddle, inquired. Yes. What do you have in mind? Charles replied. We need a lookout and someone to clear the way up, Andrew explained. My thoughts exactly, Jake interjected. You guys go on up, I'll be the lookout. We need to get Anton back to the craft for medical aid, he offered. Andrew met his gaze and said, Okay. Jake was a bit surprised Andrew hadn't objected, but he didn't comment on it. On my count, 1, 2, 3, go, Jake commanded. Andrew led the team rushing up the stairs and joined Jake in shooting anything that moved. Despite supporting Anton, Aiden and Jordan took turns in the defense as they helped Anton up the long, rocky stairs. It took a few minutes, but they made it up, with Aidan narrowly missing getting hit in the leg. With the team now at the top and the way out of the cave just ahead, Andrew sprinted outside, into the blare of Lewis and Stephen's craft. He signalled to Lewis and Stephen to watch for the team as Aidan and Jordan carried Anton out alongside Charles, who was carrying Sean. They hurried across the field, with Andrew acting as a lookout. Back underground, Jake heard the sound of running boots behind him and cursed under his breath. He sprinted up the stairs, doing his best not to get cornered or shot. Bullets pinged off the rocks close to him as he climbed. Reaching the middle of the rocky stairs, he looked up and realized how far he still had to go. Doubt crept in. Could he make it without getting hit? A bullet whizzed past his ear, nearly grazing him. Cursing again, he pressed on, but the assailants were closing in fast. Just as Jake was about to stop and face them, he heard Andrew yell, "Duck!" Jake instinctively dropped to the stone stairs and looked up to see Andrew, Aidan, Charles, Jordan, and 2 other Hawthorne guards standing at the top, providing cover. Jake's heart leaped with elation, and with renewed vigor, he sprinted the rest of the way up as cries of pain and terror echoed behind him, his team unleashing hell on the criminals with their assault rifles. When Jake reached the top, Andrew pulled him behind their defensive line. Jordan and Aidan threw 4 toxic canisters down the stairs, watching as gas began to fill the air. They all turned and ran out of the concave, through the gash in the rock, and toward the waiting crafts. Jake followed Andrew to his craft, with Aidan. Jordan and the 2 other Hawthorne guards, John and Mark, accompanied Charles. Once inside, everyone quickly took their positions. Andrew rushed to the pilot's seat of his craft, and within minutes, all 4 crafts were airborne. Andrew fired another missile at the rock opening, causing a cascade of debris to block the entrance, trapping the assailants inside. When he considered inflicting more damage, Jake intervened, saying, "There's a possibility there are children in there. Let's just get out of here, please." Andrew nodded and spoke into his earphones. "Heading out!" The 4 crafts surged upward, then turned and shot forward like flashes of light. For a few minutes, the interior of the crafts was silent. Without the earphones, Jake and Aidan couldn't hear what was happening in the other crafts, but Andrew could. Jordan was busy patching up Anton, who was whining loudly, drawing laughter and teasing from the others. There was no news about Sean, indicating he was still unconscious. Mr. Hill was recounting his ordeal at the Camoras' vineyard to the team. Andrew sighed with relief, grateful that everyone was accounted for. Glancing at Jake and then at Aidan, who sat with his head in his hands, Andrew pressed his earphone, preparing to report to Nathaniel. Back at the Hawthorne household, Nathaniel sat up as Andrew's voice crackled through his earphone. His brows furrowed, then his eyes closed in relief as Andrew relayed that everyone was safely in the crafts. "Sean's passed out cold. He looks badly tortured and Anton has been shot again," Andrew reported. "Is Sean alive, though?" Nathaniel probed, his voice echoing through the living room, silencing the light banter. "Yes, boss, he's alive," Andrew confirmed, then added, "Are we to head back home, boss?" He wanted to know if they should return to the Cavalier estate so Sean could handle his affairs before heading back. After all, that was why Mr. Hill had come along. "Yes, Andrew, you all come back. I know Sean needs to clean up after all that mayhem, but he can hardly do that if he's out of commission. Besides, something came up and I need you, Jake, and the team here ASAP," Nathaniel instructed, his voice firm and authoritative. "Yes, boss," Andrew replied as he deftly programmed the craft to head back to New York. "Can everyone hear me?" Nathaniel asked. "No, boss. Jake and his team lost their communications gadgets," Andrew explained. "All right, let the other pilots know to put me on speaker," Nathaniel ordered as he stood up, his tall, powerful presence radiating a primal strength with every deliberate movement. Arya couldn't help but be captivated by the sight, her heart fluttering as his deep, commanding voice filled the room. She fought the urge to fan herself. "You're on speaker now, boss," Andrew confirmed. "Copy that," Charles added. "Loud and clear over here," Lewis replied. "We're tuned in too, boss," Stephen echoed. "Good." Nathaniel's deep baritone resonated through all the crafts. "Guys, I just want to say I'd appreciate it if you didn't shoot my heart to hell before I'm at least 50, he began. Laughter filled the crafts before he added, "Well done, and get your asses home." Echoes of gratitude rang through Nathaniel's earphone as he slipped his free hand into his trouser pocket, settling his gaze on Arya. The intensity of her lovely eyes returning his gaze made his heart skip a beat. He had no idea what he had said or done to evoke that kind of emotion, but he was floored by it. Arya wasn't someone Nathaniel thought of as overly emotional, and she had an uncanny way of switching off her feelings. So each time he saw her visibly showing her emotions, it always got to him deeply. "I take it the threat keeping us here has been eliminated?" Ethan asked as he stood up, moving to stand in front of Nathaniel, blocking his view of Arya. A surge of irritation swelled in Nathaniel, but he contained it, directing his gaze at his friend. Alex joined them alongside Anna, and Anita stood up too, with Dawn following, all eager to know about the fate of their loved ones. "Yes, I believe it has," Nathaniel replied. "I suppose we'll have the full story when the team returns." He paused to check his watch, then added, "In 3 hours." Anna let out a sigh of relief. Anita clasped her hands together in silent prayer, and Dawn looked on with a questioning gaze. "Tom is fine. He's coming back too," Nathaniel quickly reassured her. The young woman nodded, but Nathaniel sensed she wanted to say something but decided against it. "I suppose this means we can go ahead with our party," Arya chimed in, rising to join the others. Nathaniel instinctively held out his hand for her, and Arya went to stand beside him. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. I don't see why not," Ethan responded with a pleased smile. Alex shrugged as he added, "My boss is going to make me pay back all the days I missed anyway, so I might as well make the most of it before I go back." Everyone laughed. "Don't forget my parents' invite too, Alex." "And we have to make our engagement public," Anna added, her smile radiating happiness. "Yeah, the, dinner invite," Alex said with zero enthusiasm, the internal scream of horror evident in his eyes. Nathaniel looked away, burying his face in the nook of Arya's neck to hide his laughter. Arya chuckled quietly. "I suggest we stay up until they return. They're our heroes and deserve a hero's welcome," Dawn said. Arya gave her a grateful smile. "That's a great idea, Dawn," Anita agreed. "I already told you guys." "We don't need an excuse to party. I'm in," Ethan said, prompting a round of chuckles. "All right, I'll let Miss Jonas know our boys are on their way home. And the boss," she said, glancing playfully at Nathaniel, "says we all get tomorrow off." Nathaniel's brows furrowed in a thoughtful frown, causing everyone to laugh. When Arya playfully tapped him on the chest, Nathaniel took the chance to kiss her. Back in the craft in Italy, Aidan looked up as Jake emerged from the rear of the luxury craft, now clean and dressed in a jumpsuit. The older man patted him on the head as he walked past to settle into the co-pilot's seat. Aidan got up and headed to the bathroom for a quick shower and to find something to wear. After his shower, he found a khaki overall suit and put it on, feeling like a human being again after all those hours in that bloody cage. Standing in front of the restroom mirror, he took a deep breath, then exhaled as he remembered the kid who had gotten caught in the line of fire. A memory from his past filtered through his mind, and he shook his head to shake it off. He thought that if he hadn't joined the army and met Andrew and the rest of the gang, he might have ended up like that kid, part of a criminal gang, not knowing any better and likely dying young. Outside in the cabin, Andrew pointed to the refrigerator, embedded in a side panel, and said, "Have something to eat." Jake nodded and went to the refrigerator, pulling out a box of orange juice, a sandwich, and an apple. He sat down next to Andrew, eating in silence for a minute before asking, "Is she still alive?" Andrew knew Jake was asking about Giselle without needing any further explanation. "She's not really alive, Jake," Andrew replied. "You know what I mean," Jake said, taking a bite of his apple, then his sandwich and cake. Andrew frowned at him, glancing from the food to Jake's face before shaking his head. "I was almost lion food, so whatever, old man," Jake quipped. Andrew chuckled before responding, "Yes, Jake, she's being kept alive for the baby." "Dr. Hawthorne says the baby is doing well." Jake nodded and slowly chewed his food. "Do you think it's crazy that I already believe the baby is going to survive?" he asked. "I don't think having faith is crazy, Jake," Andrew answered, giving him a sidelong glance. Jake murmured, then fell silent for a moment before continuing, "You know, Through all that nightmare back there, I'd never once worried about dying and leaving my kid alone and unprotected. I just felt like I had a solid support system behind me. Nothing has ever given me such peace, Jake reflected, his eyes misting with tears. I'm glad to have you back, man, Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. I doubt it's just gladness. I mean, knowing Nathaniel Hawthorne sent you to rescue us, that's enough to reassure me that I was right not to be so afraid of dying, Jake replied, wiping the tears from his eyes. Andrew chuckled and extended his hand for a quick fist bump. I believe if it weren't for Dr. Hawthorne, he would have joined us, Andrew said with conviction. Jake chuckled, sure that Nathaniel would have done just that and would be piloting one of the crafts. Sometimes I wonder what I did to deserve such a man, Jake said. You and me both, brother, Andrew replied. Jake sighed and after a brief silence added, I think Christine is going to break up with me. Andrew chuckled. That comment just shows how clueless you are about women, my friend, he said. What do you mean? Jake asked, his brows furrowing as he focused on Andrew. Andrew didn't immediately respond to Jake's probing. He had wanted to let him rest a bit before unloading the entire report, what had happened to Giselle, how it had happened, and the current situation, including Dr. Hawthorne, wanting Andrew's opinion about Jake's relationship with Christine. But since Jake brought it up, Andrew figured they might as well talk about it now. They had a long journey ahead, and it was just the three of them in the craft. Christine reached out to Dr. Hawthorne after you spoke with her, Andrew said, casting Jake a sidelong glance. Jake gaped at him for a moment before slowly leaning back against the seat's backrest, his face registering his shock. You're telling me Christine Powell called Dr. Hawthorne to inquire about Giselle? Jake asked, as if he wasn't quite sure he'd heard right. Not just that. She wants to come over, Andrew continued. I wasn't sure I would approve the move at the time, but with our enemy camp significantly weakened, I suppose we can make arrangements for her to be brought over. Jake made a sound of disbelief. She didn't give me the impression that she would even remotely speak to me again after I told her, and you're telling me she called Dr. Hawthorne directly? He rasped. May I ask why you sound so surprised? Aidan chimed in as he strolled over, going to the refrigerator to grab sandwiches, apples, cake, and a bottle of beer. He sat in the closest seat to the cockpit and took a bite out of the apple, because she sounded withdrawn after I told her about Julia. She's normally playful and calm, but she just went all quiet and then said, I'm going to have to get back to you, like I'm some colleague at her office, Jake explained, a note of bafflement still in his tone. Well, she might just be in shock, Andrew interjected. Aidan nodded with his mouth full. I mean, it's normal for her to be blindsided by that kind of information from a man she's totally into, Aidan said with a shrug. Did you just say the man she's into? She's had a crush on Jake since way back at Harvard, but she didn't know he was literally the blind Bartimaeus, Andrew joked, making Aidan chuckle. Contrary to what you two think, I actually know she likes me. I just feel weird because she's, 25? Jake defended. Aidan responded as he got up, moved close enough to the cockpit to grab Andrew's phone, and said to it, Hey, Alexa, would you consider a 25-year-old female an adult? Andrew started to laugh. Jake reached out and snatched the phone away from Aidan, just as Alexa's voice chimed in. A 25-year-old female is considered an adult in most cultures and legal systems. Aidan chuckled. There you have it, straight from the AI's mouth, Jake scoffed, but a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. If that's the case, why aren't you dating Noria, smartass? He replied. Noria is a 19-year-old girl who suffered abuse most of her life. The last thing she needs is for me to compound that, Aidan defended. So, if you'd met her at, say, a club, would you have a different opinion? Jake probed. When Aidan hesitated, Jake threw an apple seed at him. Aidan dodged it reflexively before quickly adding, In that scenario, I wouldn't even be in the same club as a girl her age, let alone find myself in a sexual situation with someone so young, Aidan countered. Andrew's chuckle echoed in the background as the two argued. Shut up, Aidan, Jake finally said. Aidan burst out laughing but continued to make his point clear. Andrew put the craft on autopilot and got up to grab a beer too. Standing with legs apart and facing the two, he said, It's understandable to feel like that, but regardless, you're both adults, and she made her choice when she decided to be with you. And you, Jake, made your choice when you decided to give her your attention, so maybe this is a sign that she's willing to stand by you no matter what. Andrew watched as Jake's brows furrowed in a thoughtful frown. Or, Aidan added, she's just a determined woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to go after it. You might want to keep that in mind, old man. Jake let out a sigh as he ran a hand through his hair. Maybe, but I still don't know if it's right. I don't want her to get caught up in all of this. Andrew shrugged. That's something you'll have to figure out, Jake. But if she's already reaching out, maybe she's made her choice. And it's out of your hands. Aidan leaned back, taking a sip of his beer. And if she's as tough as she seems, she's probably more ready for this than you think. Just give her a chance to prove it. Jake glanced between the two men, nodding to himself. I guess you're right. I'll know more when I see her, he replied. By the way, how's Jaden doing? With everything happening, I didn't get a chance to ask earlier, Jake inquired. She's recovering, Andrew responded, though a note of hesitation crept into his voice. Jake noticed and his frown deepened. Please don't tell me her situation has gotten worse too, he quickly asked, sitting up with concern etched on his face. She's okay, Jake. She's just burdened with guilt over what happened to Giselle. She feels like she didn't protect her well enough, Andrew explained, meeting Jake's eyes. Jake shrugged. Well, she did fail, he began. Come on, man, Aidan cut in. Listen to me, will you? Jake shot back at the younger man. She failed, no doubt about it. How did Giselle, a fashion model for crying out loud, end up being the one to save Jaden? But we all know bad stuff happens, right? I'd feel terrible too if I were in her shoes. But what's done is done. At least she's alive, and Giselle's sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Would I tell Jaden this to make her feel worse? No, but it's still the truth, Jake argued. I understand, Andrew said with a resigned sigh. But it was an ambush, and Giselle was the only backup she had. After Giselle was stabbed with a poisoned knife, Jaden kept her alive despite her own 3 gunshot wounds. We may be ex-service members, but we're still human and we bleed. You might think I can say this because it doesn't affect me personally, but the fact that they both survived for 2 damn weeks while those bastards were still hunting them. Jaden did her job, and so did Giselle. Right now, Giselle is fighting to ensure her name remains. Jaden did her best despite being on the brink of death herself. That's why we chose her as Giselle's bodyguard. Because of her resilience. She did what she was picked for, though it's unfortunate it didn't work out perfectly, Andrew explained. Jake turned away, took a deep breath, and exhaled, struggling to hold back tears. I failed her too. I know how that feels. I'm not judging Jaden, Andrew, Jake said. You can't save everyone, Jake, Aidan said, offering a comforting pat on the back. Andrew added his own reassurance with 2 quick taps. For the umpteenth time, Jake, it wasn't your responsibility to protect her. Despite what she did to the Hawthornes, they ensured her safety and survival for your sake. As I told Jaden, it's time to move on. You've done your part. Now let her rest, he said before heading back to the pilot's seat with his beer to take back the reins of the craft. A companionable silence ensued, with Jake contemplating Andrew's advice, and Aidan noting the swell of pleasure inside him as he thought of seeing Noria soon. Soon enough, they arrived in New York. 3 out of the 4 crafts landed at the Hawthorne hangar at JFK, while Andrew's craft hovered above the ground. After the other men had disembarked and signed off, Andrew lowered his craft, allowing them to board before lifting off again and heading to the Hawthorne residence. Nathaniel was still in the living room with the others when a guard announced that Andrew had landed on the helipad above the house. Nathaniel, along with Aria, Anita, Dawn, Anna, Alex, and Ethan, moved to the foyer to wait. When the elevator chimed, everyone turned their attention to it, watching as Tom Hill strolled out. Jordan and Aidan followed, supporting Anton with Charles looming tall behind them. Dad, Dawn cried, rushing to embrace her father. It's good to see you in one piece, Tom, Nathaniel said with a smile. Oh, I'm even happier to see you, Nate. Man, do I have stories to tell Liam and Owen, Tom replied. Nathaniel chuckled in amusement. "Welcome back home, Mr. Hill," Arya called out with Anita, Anna, Alex, and Ethan echoing the greetings. Andrew, Jake, and the rest of the men came to the foyer through the stairs. Anita hurried to Andrew, who pulled her into a warm embrace before pressing a kiss on her lips. Nathaniel extended his hand to Jake for a handshake, but then pulled him into a hearty hug. "Welcome back home, Jake," Nathaniel said. The two held each other for a minute before Nathaniel drew back. Jake lowered his face, trying to hide his tears. Arya moved closer, ducked under his chin and hugged him. Jake chuckled and tightened his hold around her shoulders. "Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne," Jake muttered before drawing back. Nathaniel went around, shaking hands and pulling the men into quick hugs. Arya felt tears on her face during the sweet reunion. These men, known as Nathaniel Hawthorne's bodyguards, were truly his brothers, men who had fought to keep him safe. Now that he was no longer as defenseless, he felt he was their keeper. "Man, Miss Jonas and her damn onions," Anton quipped as he wiped tears off of his face, making everyone laugh. Nathaniel noticed Dawn casting a longing glance at Anton, but made no move to go closer to him. She greeted him from a distance, and Nathaniel didn't miss the intense look Anton gave her. "This is not good," he thought, then turned his gaze to Tom, who was busy reassuring Bella that he was fine. Nathaniel suspected Tom wouldn't be pleased to find his daughter in love with a soldier of fortune. He sighed, deciding they'd address that issue when the time came. Or maybe he was reading too much into it. When Arya said, "All right, let's go to the concierge medical unit. I want to take a look at you, Anton." And Dawn asked, "How can I help?" As she hurried to follow Arya, Anita, and Anna, somewhat deliberately brushing past Anton, Nathaniel groaned inwardly. "Nope, not my imagination," he thought. "Dr. Hawthorne, you should know that Sean Cavalier has been taken to the medical unit. He's badly beaten, unconscious, and Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams are attending to him right now," Andrew informed, prompting Arya to glance back at him. She nodded and responded, "Thank you, Andrew. Would you like to at least take some aspirin?" "Yes, I'd appreciate that, Doctor." "Honestly, I think we all need more than that," he replied. "I'm coming too," Jake added, raising a hand to the wound on the back of his head. Jordan and Aiden voiced their agreement. "All right, let's head there then. But I don't want you all overwhelming my woman," Nathaniel said with a grin, prompting a ripple of laughter through the foyer. Anna and Dawn murmured "aw," and Arya giggled. While the others made their way to the northern part of the grounds, Aiden returned to the Hawthornes' apartment unit. He knew he needed medical attention too. There was a painful bump on the back of his head, and he was sure his entire body would be sore in the morning if he didn't get checked out. But first he needed to see Noria. When he reached the hallway leading to his apartment, he saw her come out, and then she froze at the sight of him. Aiden didn't hold his strides. His heart skipped a beat as he took in the sight of her, and her quiet sob brought tears to his eyes. Her blue eyes were filled with a depth of emotion Aiden had never experienced being directed at him. An affection so intense, it took his breath away. He let out a shaky exhalation. "Aiden!" she cried, running toward him. He stood still, watching her approach. When she was just inches away, she leapt into his arms and he caught her, holding her tightly without saying a word. He simply wanted to hold her for as long as he could. A few yards away at the concierge medical unit, Arya discovered Sean had been hooked up to a heart monitor. He was exactly as Andrew had described, battered, bruised, and pale. Arya noticed that his lips, the tip of his nose, and his eyelids were turning purple. She immediately realized he had been poisoned. Glancing at Rowan, he nodded in confirmation. "Please tell me he'll survive," Nathaniel said, coming to stand beside Arya, his eyes darting between Sean and Samuel Cavalier. They were at the final stage of getting the Camoras out of their lives. He didn't want either of them leaving his estate in a body bag. Arya watched as Dr. Williams moved to stand beside Rowan. The two men exchanged a glance before Rowan refocused his attention on Nathaniel. Arya unconsciously held her breath, waiting for the diagnosis. "He was given the same toxin as our other patient, but he reached us sooner," Rowan explained. "I believe they made him ingest it," Dr. Williams added, his brow furrowed in concern. "But in a diluted dose. Whoever did this intended to kill him slowly." The older man shook his head in disbelief. "Who are these people? he asked, his eyes moving from Sean's unconscious form to Nathaniel, a mix of worry and concern in his expression. Pure evil, Tom Hill replied, as he joined Nathaniel. The worst kind imaginable, he added with a heavy sigh. But thank God we've hopefully put an end to them for good. A sigh from Sam Cavalier's bed caught their attention. Nathaniel turned to see the older man's eyes fluttering open. Samuel Cavalier looked pale and frail, triggering a humbling memory for Nathaniel. One of himself during the darkest days of his chemotherapy and full-body radiation, when Aria had returned to him. The thought that she had loved and desired him even then caused his heart to tighten, and he instinctively reached for her hand. Aria, standing close to Nathaniel, felt the gentle brush of his hand against hers before their fingers intertwined. As his grip tightened, she wondered what thoughts were running through his mind. Seeing his gaze fixed on Samuel Cavalier, she followed his line of sight, trying to understand what had prompted his reaction. The only explanation that came to her was the frailty of the man lying in the hospital bed. From what she had heard and the photos Nathaniel had shown her, the once strong and powerful Samuel Cavalier was now a mere shadow of his former self. Terminal illness has a way of doing that, breaking you down in every way, leaving you vulnerable, and slowly wasting you away. The realization struck Aria as she recalled another time she had seen someone in such a state. She remembered how fragile and defenseless Nathaniel had been before his transplant at Riverview. She had been terrified that he wouldn't survive, and she knew Nathaniel had feared the same. Tightening her hold on him, she moved closer, resting against him, which made him look down at her. His brows knitted together, his gaze intense and dark, his emotions raw. He lifted one eyebrow in silent question. Aria shook her head, assuring him it was nothing. She just needed to hold him, to comfort him, and to remind him that they had won that battle and would keep fighting, ensuring he would never be in that position again until they were both old and grey. She snuggled closer, their hands still clasped. Nathaniel, slightly puzzled by Aria's emotions, remembered that she was pregnant, and pregnant women often experienced heightened emotions. Despite the unit being full of people, he lowered his head to kiss the top of hers, not releasing her hand. It didn't seem like Aria had any intention of letting go anyway. A small smile tugged at the corners of his lips. You didn't answer Nate's question. I believe he asked if Sean would make it, Samuel Cavalier said, his voice low and barely audible. I believe he will, Mr. Cavalier. His vitals are strong, and we won't leave his side until he's out of danger. Rest assured, Rowan replied, his voice carrying a determined edge. Thank you, Samuel Cavalier responded. The other patient you mentioned, how long did it take for them to reach you? He asked. About 2 weeks, give or take. By then the poison had already caused significant damage, and there was no way to reverse it, Rowan explained. How long has the poison been in my boy's system? Samuel Cavalier asked, concern evident in his weakened voice. We can't be certain, but since we know when he left here, we can safely say it's only been a few hours, Rowan answered. Samuel Cavalier sighed in relief. Let's make sure he doesn't end up like your other patient then, he urged. Absolutely, Rowan quickly agreed. How are you feeling, Uncle Sam? Nathaniel asked, as he moved toward the older man's bed, guiding Aria with him, eager to steer the conversation away from Samuel's probing questions. Samuel let out a small chuckle. Are you asking as a pharmacological researcher? Or as my godson, Nate? He teased. Let me think, Nathaniel replied, his tone thoughtful, which brought a smile to the older man's face. A bit of both, I'd say, he quipped. Well then, I hope you'll be pleased to know I feel like crap, Samuel Cavalier replied, drawing laughter from everyone. Then, in a more serious tone, he added, It's not pleasant to feel like a helpless child, but I do feel somewhat rested, and those blinding headaches are gone, so I guess that's progress. I just hope this treatment works, or I'll be pretty mad at you and my guardian angel, he said, fixing his sharp gaze on Aria. Both Nathaniel and Aria chuckled. Aria then made to move to check Samuel's vitals, but Nathaniel held onto her hand. She threw him a sidelong glance, and he simply grinned, unapologetic. Experimental drugs or not, I seriously doubt you'd let something like cancer beat you, Kimura, Tom Hill teased. The older man chuckled in response. But the good news is the drug is working, Rowan added. I know it's still early to make such a bold claim, but I'm usually the skeptical one. Dr. Hawthorne's the optimist, and based on what I've seen in the past hour, oh boy, I can't wait to present this to the medical board, he said, sounding like an excited kid with a new toy. Arya glanced at Nathaniel and saw him give Rowan a wickedly arched eyebrow, as if daring him with a silent, "Really?" She held back a laugh. It was clear that Nathaniel's reservations about Sebastian would take quite a while to fade. Nathaniel couldn't quite understand the surprise in Rowan's tone. Did the man really think he wasn't capable of making such a groundbreaking discovery in the medical field? Talking about presenting to the medical board with such audacity, it grated on him. Of course, he was confident in what his products could achieve. Really? Even the newly developed one in the testing phase? A voice questioned in his head. He shook his head, a displeased frown creasing his brows. Fine, he might not be absolutely sure, but he wasn't an idiot. The subtle surprise in Arya's boyfriend's voice irritated him. Idiot, he thought. Arya tugged at his hand, pulling his attention back to her. He unconsciously glowered at her, but for some reason, she found it amusing. Otherwise, why was she looking at him like that? I suppose we will have a full report in about 2 weeks, but rest assured, Mr. Cavalier, we will be with you every step of the way, Dr. Williams interjected. Dr. Hawthorne, a moment, please, Anita called out, drawing Arya's attention. Arya noticed her standing beside Sean Cavalier's bed, holding his medical report. With furrowed brows, she left Samuel Cavalier's bedside to join Anita. As she reached her, Anita leaned in close and whispered, "If these evil people made Sean Cavalier drink poison and managed to trap Jake and the other men in a cage, shouldn't we be testing them for military-grade toxins? I mean, what do you think it took to get Jake, not to mention Aiden, Anton, and Jordan, into that cage?" Anita's reasoning sparked Arya's concern. She immediately nodded in agreement, thanked Anita, and then grasped her wrist, pulling her along to the other end of the unit where Dr. Sterling was attending to the men. "How's it going?" Arya asked as she joined Dr. Sterling, who was busy stitching the back of Jake's head. They were all hit pretty hard on the head. Luckily, it's not too deep, but the tear needs stitches, the doctor responded without breaking concentration. "Good," Arya replied. Then turning to Jake, she asked, "Do you think there's any chance you guys were exposed to the same toxins as Sean?" Jake's brows furrowed as he met her gaze, holding it with a pensive stare. "I wouldn't know. 1 minute we were on the yacht, then in the water trying to escape shards of rock, and the next thing we knew we were in a cage," he said, leaving Arya, Anita, and Dr. Sterling gaping at him. "In a what now?" Arya exclaimed, her tone sharp with the protectiveness of a mother hen. Jake swallowed nervously. "Oh boy," Jordan muttered, trying to quietly slip away, but Arya swiftly turned, fixing each of them with a stern gaze. Andrew and Charles slowly began to step back. "So the 4 of you decided to leave this unit when you were barely healed to get yourselves into another life-threatening situation," she began. "We were perfectly fine, Dr. Hawthorne," Anton chimed in, but he quickly regretted it when Arya's glare pinned him in place. He shifted uncomfortably on the hospital bed. "Oh, really? I didn't realize you had a medical degree, tough guy," Arya responded in a soft, honeyed tone. Sorry, Mom," Anton mumbled, his eyes wide with a mix of comical fear and surprise. "Dr. Sterling, please assist me in drawing their blood. We need to test them for any possible poisoning or anything else that could have entered their systems," Arya instructed. "Yes, Doctor," Dr. Sterling replied as Anita stepped forward to help. "You two are getting your blood tested as well, Andrew, and you too, Charles," Arya added firmly. "But we didn't even." Andrew began to argue, only to be silenced by a glare from both Arya and Anita. "This isn't the time to be brave, man," Charles whispered in Andrew's ear, making him stifle a chuckle. A few minutes later, the test results confirmed the presence of a military-grade toxin in their blood. Specifically, 3-quinaclidinyl benzylate, regularly referred to as BZ. Andrew suggested that a minimal dose had likely been used to incapacitate Jake and his team. BZ works by disrupting neurotransmission in the brain, leading to temporary unconsciousness, confusion, and disorientation, which would have left the men vulnerable and defenseless. Jake, Aiden, and Jordan were immediately directed to settle onto the hospital beds next to Anton's. Anita, Dr. Sterling, and Aria quickly set up IV lines for each of them and administered physostigmine, the antidote for BZ exposure. This drug helps reverse the central nervous system depression caused by BZ by increasing levels of acetylcholine, restoring normal brain function. As Jake lay down, he felt a wave of relief. He was bone-tired and couldn't tell if it was due to the BZ toxin or just sheer exhaustion. He wished he could go straight to Evergreen Memorial Hospital to see Giselle and maybe catch a glimpse of his unborn child, but it was late, and he knew he needed his strength. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and let sleep take over. As the four men drifted off, Andrew and Charles glanced anxiously at Dr. Sterling, and as if sensing their eyes on her, she turned and locked eyes with Charles. "They're fine, just resting," she reassured the men. Charles nodded in acknowledgement, his worry easing. After Nathaniel and the others had left, Charles stepped outside the unit, taking a deep, calming breath as he looked up at the heavens, grateful for their safe return. "I'm glad to see you're okay," Dr. Sterling's voice came from behind him. He turned to meet her gaze, noticing the weariness in her eyes. Glancing at his watch, he realized it was 3 a.m. "You should get some rest," he suggested gently. "You look exhausted." Dr. Sterling let out an awkward laugh. "That's not exactly a compliment," she teased. "Not a fan of the truth?" Charles teased back. "I think you know what I mean," she replied with a faint smile. Charles chuckled and stepped closer, leaving just a few inches between them. As her smile faded, he saw the intensity in her eyes as she looked up at him. Charles felt a stir of desire as he tucked a loose curl behind her ear. "Must you be here at all hours of the night?" Charles murmured, his tall frame leaning close to hers. "No," she whispered. "Then come to my apartment with me," he invited, his voice deepening. "Charles," Dr. Sterling began softly, but before she could say more, Charles closed the gap between them, kissing her with a passion that left her clinging to him. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathless. Charles looked into her eyes, seeing the mix of longing, surrender, and hunger as she flicked her tongue across her bottom lip. Without hesitation, he lifted her in his arms as if she weighed nothing. His voice was almost a growl as he said, "You're spending the night with me, or what's left of it." Dr. Sterling didn't object. Charles liked to think she was at a loss for words, judging by the way she kept glancing between his eyes and his mouth. He grinned at her lovingly. Back at the Hawthorne household, after Nathaniel and Aria had showered and settled into bed, snuggled together, Aria asked the question that had been on her mind all night. "Does this mean we can resume our regular lives and our boys can enroll in school?" Nathaniel pressed a kiss to her lips, tenderly teasing the soft flesh before responding, "Yes, it means Liam and Owen can start regular school. As for you..." His deep voice trailed off as he rose to sit on his heels, gently holding her ankles. "You'll need to continue observing bed rest until your doctor says otherwise," he added, pressing a kiss to her instep, sending electric shivers through her. Aria had a few choice retorts to that bold declaration, but she found it hard to summon any anger with him trailing kisses on her skin like that. Before her thoughts were overtaken by pure pleasure, she felt a thrill at the idea of telling the boys they could finally attend regular school. A sharp bite on her skin made her moan, and she reached out to tangle her fingers in his luscious hair. "Nathan," she moaned softly. Enough, an impeccably dressed woman in her Owen's eyelids fluttered at the gentle tickle of something soft brushing against his nose. He frowned in mild annoyance, assuming it was Liam trying to wake him up. But as he inhaled, the familiar scent of his mum's perfume filled the air, and a smile crept across his face. He opened one eye, and his smile brightened even more when he saw his mum lying beside him on the bed. Her face lit up with a warm smile. She had been so busy these past few weeks, and Owen figured she must have come to tell them she'd be spending the day with them. He and Liam had really missed spending time with her and their dad. Although their parents' friends had tried their best to fill the gap, nothing could replace the joy of a day spent with both Mom and Dad. "Hey, my knight," she whispered, making Owen feel warm all over. Instinctively, he reached out, wrapping his arms around her neck and pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Easy there, son, that's my wife you've got over there." His dad's deep voice sounded from the doorway, drawing Owen's attention. Owen chuckled, but before he could respond, Liam beat him to it. "She's our mom too, though," he said, sitting up in bed and rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Nathaniel chuckled as he walked over to Liam's bed, reaching out to ruffle his hair. Liam's face lit up with a smile. "We have some news," Arya began as she sat up. Owen followed suit, moving closer to lean against her. Liam quickly jumped out of bed and crossed the room to climb onto Owen's bed, hugging their mom as well. "Really?" Nathaniel asked, feigning hurt. Arya blew him a kiss as she held her boys close. "I've missed you, Mom," Liam said. "Oh, my sweet knight, I'm so sorry," Arya replied, kissing his forehead and tightening her hold on his small shoulders. "It's been a rough week, but I promise we'll spend today together, okay?" "With Daddy too?" Liam asked, glancing over at Nathaniel, who beamed at them. "Yes, of course, baby," Arya quickly responded. Nathaniel then added, "I hope so, because you three are breaking my heart right now. I want a hug too," he teased. Arya and the twins giggled, and then Owen and Liam quickly ran over to hug him. Nathaniel laughed, his heart swelling with emotion. "Gosh, I love you too," he said softly. "We love you too, Daddy," they replied in unison. "All right, what about the news?" Owen asked eagerly, and Arya smiled at how grown-up he sounded. "Your dad called the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence, and the principal agreed to meet us there today," Arya announced. The twins exchanged confused glances, their brows furrowing. Owen spoke up, "But it's Saturday." Nathaniel frowned at their reaction. "You don't sound too thrilled about the meeting, weekend or not," he remarked. Liam and Owen shrugged. "It's okay, I guess," Liam replied. "Come on, what's bothering you?" Arya pressed. "It's nothing, Mum," Owen quickly said. "We'll go get ready," Liam added. The two exchanged another glance, then sprang into action, moving in sync. Nathaniel exchanged a puzzled look with Arya, who shrugged, equally baffled by the twins' response. Once the boys entered the bathroom and shut the door, Nathaniel whispered, "I'll handle it, babe. Go get ready." He helped her up from Owen's bed and stole a quick kiss before letting her waddle away. In the bathroom, the twins started brushing their teeth in front of the large mirror embedded in the marble wall. Owen glanced at Liam, studying him. He felt indifferent about going to regular school, thinking there wasn't much to it beyond waking up earlier, getting ready, and dealing with snooty kids all day. Liam was usually the one excited about these things. His brother loved socializing and had an adventurous spirit, but ever since the kidnapping attempt, he hadn't been much of himself. And then there was their experience back in Alaska. Things were different now, though. Back then, they were just Arya's boys, but now their surname carried weight. It wasn't just a meaningless name their mom had chosen to give them. Owen knew no one would dare mess with them now, and if anyone tried, he could protect himself and his brother. He wouldn't let anyone belittle them or their mom ever again. "You don't seem too happy about starting regular school." "Why?" Owen asked Liam, his voice muffled by the toothbrush in his mouth. Liam shrugged. "It's okay, I guess." "I'm just not sure if I'll like it," he replied, spitting out the toothpaste into the ceramic sink. "Dad says we have about 4 schools to choose from. The Kensington Academy for Early Excellence is just the first on the list. If we don't like it, we can always tell Mum and Dad," Owen said. "Yeah, I guess," Liam replied noncommittally, still unsure if he was ready for regular school. But then he wondered, would he ever be ready? He might as well give it a try. And like Owen said, if they didn't like it, they could always tell their mum and dad. When Nathaniel opened the door, he saw the twins rinsing their mouths. Leaning his shoulder against the doorframe, he said, "All right, now that it's just us guys, tell me, what's with the cold reception?" Liam turned to face his dad and said, "It's nothing really, Dad. I'm just not sure if I'll like it there. But Owen said we should see it first, so let's give it a try." Nathaniel crouched down to their eye level and responded, "Let's treat it as a tour and see how it goes. If you don't like it, we'll try the next school on the list. No pressure. Just try to have fun, okay?" "Yes, Daddy," they chorused. Earlier on at the concierge medical unit, Jake had woken up around 7 a.m. to find the entire place as quiet as a graveyard. His eyes darted to the IV drip, noticing that it had finished, and the IV line had been removed from his hand. He let out a sigh, feeling somewhat fatigued, but he remembered he needed to go to Evergreen Memorial Hospital. Since the doctors had removed the IV line, he figured there was nothing keeping him there. With a deep sigh, he slowly got up. Noticing that his body wasn't responding as quickly as it should, his brows furrowed as he rubbed his hands over his face, feeling unusually tired despite just waking up. Glancing towards the other beds where Anton, Aidan, and Jordan were supposed to be, he saw that the three were still passed out. Directing his gaze to the other end where the Kimuras were, he saw Sean and Samuel Cavalier asleep as well. Dr. Williams was asleep on a side couch alongside Rowan. As Jake tried to stand, he found himself unsteady on his feet. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he heard a feminine voice say. Looking in that direction, he saw it was Dr. Sterling. Entering the concierge medical unit with Charles behind her, Jake quickly noted the doctor's casual wear, noticing how loosely her hair was tied and the slightly red and swollen lips. He lowered his gaze, the corners of his lips twitching in a knowing smile. Bloody dog, he thought to himself. Turns out the pretend kiss Charles had given the pretty doctor wasn't pretend anymore. He wondered how he'd missed that. "Sit down, Jake," Charles commanded, sounding like a drill sergeant. Jake was tempted to say, "Yes, sir, sergeant, sir," just to needle him. I need to be somewhere," Jake rasped in a low, deep voice, but Charles heard him. Dr. Sterling darted a glance from Jake to Charles, and whatever she saw made her let out a sigh. "He needs rest," she said in a way of warning. Charles nodded, throwing her a warm gaze before coming to stand beside Jake. "I'll bring him back. I promise we'll make it quick," Charles reassured. "All right, babe," Dr. Sterling replied in a soft, low voice before walking towards the other side of the unit. "Claire told me you guys should be out of commission for at least 24 hours. How come you're up?" Charles asked as he helped Jake into his Jeep and hurried to the other side to slip behind the wheel. "Claire?" Jake repeated in a teasing tone. Charles smacked him on the side of his head. "Ouch!" Jake cried out in protest. "Shut up, Jake," Charles replied, a smile stretching his lips. "You know me, nothing can keep me down when my mind is set on something. Besides, I have this inner timer that doesn't let me sleep beyond a certain time," Jake replied. "But I do feel strange," he added. "Strange? Do you have any idea what you guys were saved from? Claire is genuinely worried about you all. She managed only a few hours of sleep," Charles said. "I bet she did." "How many hours did she actually get to sleep?" Jake teased. Charles shook his head, laughing. "Fine, I walked straight into that one, didn't I?" he replied. Jake chuckled. "So you and the doctor, huh?" he remarked. "How did I miss that?" he added, giving Charles a sidelong glance. "It's not that we're hiding it, we just take advantage of our free time," Charles replied. "Oh yes, that's obvious, babe," Jake quipped, getting another playful smack, this time on the chest. "You might want to ease up on the hitting, or I might have to report you to Dr. Sterling. Sorry, Claire, since she's practically my sister-in-law now and all," Jake quipped. Charles let out a hearty laugh. "You are such an ass," he replied, laughing. Jake chuckled, enjoying teasing him. "It's good to have you back, man," Charles said after a short, companionable silence. "It's good to be back," Jake replied, his voice deep and low, almost inaudible. Meanwhile, Andrew, Lewis, Nathaniel, Aria, Ethan, Alex, Anna, and Anita accompanied the twins to the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence. Upon arrival, the family was greeted and escorted to the principal's meeting room. Aria noticed that despite it being Saturday, the school grounds were bustling with activity. As they reached the principal's office, Aria felt a twinge of intimidation. She thought back to when she had first arrived in New York with her boys months ago, imagining how she would have felt walking into such a swanky place back then. The office exuded sophistication, with its rich mahogany paneling, plush velvet chairs, and large ornate desk. Soft ambient lighting highlighted the room's elegant decor, and large windows offered a panoramic view of the meticulously manicured grounds. Contemporary art and lush greenery decorated the space, creating an atmosphere of both warmth and exclusivity. Aria's eyes darted around, taking it all in, and she thought to herself, "Yep, I would have run back with my tail between my legs." The place was definitely not designed for a small-town single mother from Sylvan Ridge, Alaska. While the principal prepared for the meeting, Nathaniel, Aria, and the others were directed to a nearby luxurious waiting room. The room featured high-backed leather chairs, a sleek glass coffee table, and elegant chandeliers casting a soft glow. The walls were lined with bookcases filled with classic literature and modern academic texts. For some reason, Aria's eyes met Anita's, and, as if reading her mind, Anita gave her the gueule. "Look." Aria stifled a laugh, not surprised that Anita found the place utterly ridiculous. Soon enough, an impeccably dressed woman in her 50s entered. Her hair was tightly woven atop her head, and nothing about her seemed out of place. She looked like the picture-perfect image of a strict educator with years of experience under her belt. Her presence was quite intimidating. Sensing Aria's nervousness, Nathaniel intertwined his left hand with hers as he stood up, prompting Aria and everyone else to rise as well. Nathaniel noticed how the boys clung to his and their mother's sides. He hoped they would like the school, which was the top one in the country and the closest to their home. It would make commuting easier and offer better security. "Welcome, Mr. Hawthorne and Dr. Everly Hawthorne, to the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence." The woman greeted them in a British-accented tone, offering a polite smile and nod to everyone. Aria hoped that her warm smile was an indication that she was not as cold as the pristine environment suggested. "Thank you for having us, Miss Fisher," Nathaniel replied curtly. His voice was neither overly friendly nor formal, but perfectly measured, making it almost difficult to decipher. Aria thought that if Nathaniel spoke to her in that tone, she would be quite anxious. "It would indeed be an honor to have your family join ours. And I assume these young gentlemen are Master Liam and Master Owen?" Miss Fisher asked, bending slightly to acknowledge Liam and Owen. The boys offered her a handshake, which seemed to both impress and please her. A smile, which Aria thought seemed almost genuine, crossed Miss Fisher's lips as she said, "Nice to meet you. How about we leave the parents and show Mr. Bradford here what you'll be up against?" She gave the boys a keen scrutiny. "We would love that very much, thank you, madam," Owen replied in a formal tone. Miss Fisher actually beamed at him. Nathaniel cast Aria a proud glance, his smile clearly showing his pride. Aria nearly rolled her eyes at the display. "Please make yourselves comfortable while we work our magic with the young ones," Miss Fisher said as she and Mr. Bradford, a middle-aged, mousy man, led the twins to an adjoining room. Liam glanced back over his shoulder as if to reassure himself that everyone was still there. Andrew made a sign indicating that if he needed backup, all he needed to do was yell. Liam chuckled quietly and gave him a curt nod. Aria felt tears prick at the back of her eyes as she watched the exchange. She knew Liam seemed unusually reserved and hoped he would have a change of heart before they left. In the examination room, the twins' evaluation began with a thorough assessment of their cognitive abilities before they were given a detailed mathematics test. Liam and Owen exchanged a confident smile as they looked over the math problems. The first question asked them to solve for x in the equation. 3x plus 5 equals sine 20. They quickly wrote out the solution as 3x through 2 thirds into 5, which equals 2 3x equals sine 15. So therefore, x equals 3 divided 15 equals sine 5. The second question required them to calculate the value of. They provided the solution with ease. 72 minus 32 equals 49 to 9 equals sine 40. The third question asked them to find the area of a rectangle with a length of 8 centimeters and a width of 6 centimeters. They promptly answered, area equals sine, length x, width equals sine 8 centimeters, x 6 centimeters equals sine 48 square centimeters. The final question was to solve for in the equation, 2y, 4 equals sine 10. Their solution was 2y. 72 minus 32 equals 49 to 9 equals sine 40. The third question asked them to find the area of a rectangle with a length of 8 centimeters and a width of 6 centimeters. They promptly answered, area equals sine, length x, width equals sine 8 centimeters, x 6 centimeters equals sine 48 square centimeters. The final question was to solve for in the equation, 2y, 4 equals sine 10. Their solution was 2y, 10 plus 4, equals to 2y equals sine 14. So therefore, y equals 14 divided 2 equals sine 7. Although they had 15 minutes to complete the test, Liam and Owen finished in under 3 minutes. When they raised their hands to get Miss Fisher and Mr. Bradford's attention, the adults assumed they needed help. Miss Fisher asked, "Is something unclear, Master Hawthorne?" Her tone was warm yet authoritative. "Can we have more questions, please?" Liam asked eagerly. "Excuse me?" Miss Fisher replied, her brow furrowing. "He means we're finished. Is that all? Owen clarified. Owen found the problems much easier than the ones their mum usually gave them. It was practically child's play. Let me see that, Mr. Bradford said, hurrying over to their desk. Liam noticed the look of amazement Mr. Bradford shared with Miss Fisher and grinned, enjoying the surprise and knowing they had been underestimated. This is quite impressive, Miss Fisher exclaimed. Liam leaned back in his seat with a satisfied smile, discreetly fist-bumping with Owen. Well then, let's move on to current affairs, Mr. Bradford suggested. Liam and Owen grinned in anticipation. Liam watched as Mr. Bradford cleared his throat and exchanged a quick glance with Ms. Fisher before continuing. Liam could tell the man was about to raise the stakes, and a grin spread across his face in anticipation. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea after all, he thought to himself. Who is the current Secretary-General of the United Nations? Owen fought down a triumphant laugh. He could see that the man expected the question to stump them. Owen's hand shot up almost immediately. Antonio Guterres, he answered confidently. Correct, Mr. Bradford replied, unable to hide his surprise and pleasure. Now can either of you tell me the capital city of Australia? Liam grinned and answered, Canberra. Excellent, Mr. Bradford said, exchanging a look with Miss Fisher, who seemed equally impressed. Then the woman chipped in, asking, what is the main objective of the Paris Agreement? This time, both twins answered in unison. To combat climate change by limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, compared to pre-industrial levels. Miss Fisher blinked, momentarily speechless. Where did you learn that? She asked, genuinely curious. Our dad teaches us about global issues, and our mum talks about how everything affects people's health, Liam explained matter-of-factly. Owen nodded in agreement, adding, we also have pet robots. Liam chuckled, certain that the adults had no idea what Owen meant by that. Mr. Bradford couldn't help but laugh softly. Well, can I claim them? He joked, addressing Miss Fisher, making the woman chuckle. Please give us a minute, Miss Fisher said, gesturing for Mr. Bradford to follow her. When the door shut behind them, Liam and Owen noticed another door quietly open. 2 older boys rushed in, quickly rummaging through the desk and grabbing some papers before heading for the exit. As they did, one of the boys glanced at Liam and Owen and sneered, You didn't see us. If you snitch, don't even think of attending this school because I'll make your life a living hell. Liam's brows furrowed. Great, we are getting bullied already, he thought with displeasure. Owen, unfazed, replied coolly, You might want to rethink your words when you talk to me and my brother. We're no pushovers, and we won't be intimidated into being accomplices to whatever nonsense you have going on there. He gestured dismissively with his left hand. Liam's eyes darted from the 2 boys to Owen. He noted that the boys were at least 10 years old, bigger and taller, and was more than impressed that Owen didn't seem the least bit scared of them. A slow smile stretched across his face. It looked like this whole regular school thing was going to be quite an adventure. Who's the little mouse talking to, huh? The other boy growled menacingly. Owen Hawthorne, Liam interjected, drawing their attention to him. And I am Liam Hawthorne, he added with confidence. Owen stood up, slipping his hands into his pockets in a move he'd seen his dad do. Now tell me, who exactly is your father in this town? 2 boys looked taken aback. Liam fought down a laugh, thinking, Well played, brother, well played. Owen thought the look on the boys' faces was priceless. They were evidently taken aback, probably wondering if they were seeing and hearing right. He knew they were bigger and older, and that there were 2 of them. But his Uncle Andrew had taught him that while size matters in terms of strength, it doesn't necessarily mean a smaller person can't defeat a bigger one. One just needs to key into what they have as an advantage, which often involves being underestimated. This can create an element of surprise. Then there's the advantage of agility and, of course, knowing exactly where to target. To overcome someone bigger, Owen knew a few vulnerable places to strike. A sharp blow to the nose could disorient them, causing their eyes to water and their balance to falter. A jab to the throat could leave them gasping for air, momentarily incapacitated. The solar plexus just below the chest was another sensitive area. A well-placed hit could knock the wind out of them. And then there were the knees, vital for movement and easy to destabilize with a quick kick. Even a small, swift punch to the ears could be disorienting, causing dizziness and confusion. Owen understood that with precision and speed, a smaller person could exploit these weak points to level the playing field against a larger opponent. Yet that didn't mean Owen wasn't nervous about facing two bullies. Despite his outward confidence, his Uncle Andrew had taught him that feeling fear is natural. Only someone reckless wouldn't experience it. But Uncle Andrew also emphasized that one mustn't let fear take control, as that would be a sure path to defeat. Owen lifted his chin in defiance. The two bullies exchanged confused glances, just as Liam stood up to join Owen. Voices outside seemed to jolt the bullies back to reality. One nudged the other and whispered urgently, "We've got to go." The other boy gave a quick nod, and they hurried towards the side door. But before leaving, one of them glanced back, making a threatening slashing gesture across his throat, his eyes cold and menacing. Liam responded with a low growl and took a step forward, causing the bully to raise an eyebrow in surprise, probably puzzled by their lack of fear. However, his friend quickly pulled him out the side door just as the door at the front of the room was pulled open, and Miss Fisher re-entered with Mr. Bradford, followed by their parents. Liam exchanged a glance with Owen, determination etched on their young faces, and they both nodded, silently coming to a decision. Aria and Nathaniel weren't surprised to hear the school administrators praising the twins. Miss Fisher even asked to see their birth certificates, and Nathaniel suspected she wanted to confirm that the boys weren't just small adults pretending to be 5. Hearing about his son's test results filled him with pride. The boys' knowledge far surpasses what is typical for their age group, but we can't place them in a class that doesn't challenge them just because they're young, Miss Fisher said. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Aria asked, intrigued but slightly anxious. She hoped the woman wasn't going to recommend sending the twins to a distant school, like what was suggested by the twins' principal back in Sylvan Ridge. Her boys were young, though tall for their age, thanks to their dad. But still, she wasn't ready to be separated from them. "If you're agreeable, Mr. and Dr. Hawthorne, I'd like to have the twins take tests designed for 2nd and 3rd graders. Depending on which test they excel in, we'll place them in that class for a month, and then reassess to ensure it's the right fit," Miss Fisher explained. Aria's grip on Nathaniel's hand tightened. Her first thought was that 2nd and 3rd grades were typically for 7 to 8-year-olds. Wouldn't that put them at risk of being bullied by older kids, though? She had let that skip her notice back home in Sylvan Ridge and wasn't going to take that lightly again. What the older woman was suggesting was great, but she wasn't sure how to feel about it. Nathaniel could sense Aria's concern and understood it well, but despite their worries, they couldn't hold the boys back. Life would present its own challenges, and the twins needed to be prepared to face them. "If that's your expert opinion, then we trust you to proceed. But tell me, Miss Fisher, what's your school's policy on bullying at the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence?" Nathaniel asked, noticing the understanding in Miss Fisher's eyes. The slight twitch of Aria's hand in his confirmed his suspicion about the source of her anxiety. "Our policy on bullying is strict. Some parents even say it's harsh. Any student caught bullying is immediately expelled. We do not tolerate such behavior here," she responded, her tone firm. Nathaniel gave a brief nod. "In that case, how can we support this process?" he asked, giving Aria's hand a reassuring squeeze. She nodded in agreement. "Join us in delivering the news to the boys," she said with a polite smile. "Of course," Nathaniel replied. As they entered the room where the boys were waiting, Nathaniel smiled at them, watching as they studied the adults' expressions. Miss Fisher approached the twins with Mr. Bradford and said, "You both aced the test, so we'd like to suggest you try tests designed for 2nd and 3rd graders. We've already discussed it with your parents, and they agree. What do you think?" she asked. The boys exchanged a glance, then turned back to her and said in unison, "Let's do it." Nathaniel chuckled. "But I must warn you, if you pass these tests, you might skip levels and be placed in 2nd or 3rd grade," Miss Fisher cautioned with a smile. Owen grinned. "That sounds like a challenge, madam," he replied. "Challenge accepted," Liam added. Miss Fisher chuckled, amusement crinkling the corners of her eyes. "All right, let's get started," Mr. Bradford announced. Liam and Owen glanced at their parents, and Aria mouthed, "I love you." Nathaniel winked at them, and the boys' faces lit up with smiles. Meanwhile, a few blocks away at Evergreen Memorial Hospital, Charles and Jake were led to Giselle's room by Dr. Yen. Charles suspected Dr. Sterling had called ahead to notify the hospital staff, as the woman was conveniently waiting at the reception. As they arrived, Dr. Yen had approached them before the receptionist had a chance to respond. "You're here for Miss Giselle Darfield?" Dr. Yen had inquired. Jake froze at the name. "Yes, please," Charles answered quickly. Jake cast a shocked glance at him as they followed the shorter woman. "Darfield? You guys let her adopt my last name and didn't think I needed to know?" Jake exclaimed in disbelief. "That wasn't us, Jake. That was between her and Jaden. She chose her own name, remember?" Charles replied quietly. Jake felt a pang of emotion. He had never considered Julia adopting his last name. Perhaps if she had simply kept in touch after their long, passionate encounter, instead of using him to get to Nathaniel Hawthorne, things might have turned out differently. He could easily picture her as Mrs. Darfield. He could also imagine Giselle as Mrs. Darfield, especially since he had felt drawn to her whenever they were near each other. It seemed plausible that they might have eventually come to accept they belonged together despite their differences. But now, the only person he could envision as Mrs. Darfield was Christine Powell. He wasn't sure if it was because she had requested the title temporarily or because he wished it to be so. He figured he would sort things out eventually and perhaps needed to pay more attention. Dr. Yen opened the door to Giselle's room and entered. Charles placed a hand on Jake's shoulder to stop him from following the woman. "How about I check on Jaden while you do this? She's in the last room to the left. Meet me there when you're done," Charles said. Jake nodded, understanding this was Charles's way of giving him some privacy. Jake entered as Charles walked away, his eyes settling on the bed and the slight curve of Giselle's stomach. He let out a sharp breath at the sight. It was one thing to be told he was going to be a father. Seeing the evidence was another matter entirely. "Is there anything I can help you with?" Dr. Yen asked gently. I was hoping I could see a scan of the baby," Jake said, his voice wavering. "Certainly," Dr. Yen replied, and got to work. Jake moved to the side of the bed, his gaze drifting over Giselle's body until it rested on her face. The last time he saw her, she had just undergone plastic surgery and was covered in bandages. Now the results of Dr. Hawthorne's work were evident in the way her gunshot wounds had been concealed. She looked a bit different from Julia, but she was still beautiful. He wished she could open her eyes and speak to him. He wondered how she had felt when she first discovered she was carrying his child. Julia would have been horrified at the thought of bearing an ordinary bodyguard's child. A smile played on Jake's lips as he imagined her reaction. She would have cursed him for putting his nobody inside her. Tears welled up in Jake's eyes. "Are you ready, Mr. Darfield?" Dr. Yen asked, her tone warm and compassionate. "Yeah," Jake replied, his voice rough. Dr. Yen motioned for Jake to sit in a chair beside the bed. He carefully lowered himself into the chair as she exposed Giselle's baby bump, applied ultrasound gel to her stomach, and used the ultrasound transducer to spread it. Jake saw the baby clearly and heard its heartbeat loud and clear. Feeling an immediate connection, tears streamed down his face as he struggled to control his emotions. He gave up trying to hold them back and let them fall freely. Gently he took Giselle's lifeless hand, raised it to his lips, and kissed the back of her hand, his eyes fixed on the scan monitor as Dr. Yen explained the details. "You can see here," Dr. Yen said, pointing to the screen. "This is the baby's head. It's well formed now, and the brain and facial features are developing nicely." Jake watched in awe, his gaze never leaving the screen. "And it's moving, right?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Dr. Yen smiled reassuringly. "Yes, the baby is quite active at this stage. You can see it moving its arms and legs, and it's developing muscle tones. The heartbeat is strong, which is a good sign." Jake nodded. "Good signs, huh? I like good signs," he rasped softly. The doctor continued, pointing to various parts of the scan. "Here's the baby's spine and ribs. The bones are forming well, and the baby is growing at a healthy rate. All the measurements are right on track for its age." Jake's heart swelled with emotion as he absorbed the details. "That's good. Thank you," he said, then looked at Giselle. "How about her? How is she doing?" His voice cracked a little as he gestured towards her. Dr. Yen glanced at Giselle, who lay still and serene. She's doing well under the circumstances. Our priority is the baby's health, but we're monitoring Giselle closely to ensure everything remains stable. The baby's growth is a positive sign." Jake nodded, tears still streaming down his face. "May I please have a printout of that?" he asked, pointing to the scan monitor. "Of course," Dr. Yen replied with a sympathetic smile. She quickly printed out the scan and handed it to Jake. He took it gingerly, studying it intently as Dr. Yen cleaned the gel from Giselle's stomach. Once she finished and seemed to sense he needed a moment, she excused herself and left. Alone in the hospital room, Jake pocketed the scan picture and used both hands to hold Giselle's hand. Brushing kisses on its back, looking at her lifeless face, he whispered, "I promise I'll be here for you and our baby. I will take good care of him or her and be the best father I can. I promise you, Jules. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I couldn't help you, that I wasn't there when you needed me the most. I'm so sorry." His powerful, strong shoulders shook as he broke down crying. After a short while, he wiped his tears, leaned over Giselle, pressed a kiss to her lips, and whispered, "I love you, baby, but I must let you rest now." He stroked her temple and ran his fingers through her blonde hair, before abruptly pulling back as if forcefully severing their bond. He turned away and walked out of the room, heading down the hallway to the room Charles had described earlier as Jaden's. He wiped his face dry. His eyes were red from all the crying, but he didn't care. A sense of peace settled in his soul after his confession. Yes, he loved Julia, but their union was impossible. Christine was his future. If she would have him and the child he hoped to have in a couple of weeks, then he would give her his all. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Reaching Jaden's door, he knocked before pushing it open. Charles was seated on a side couch and Jaden was on the bed. She immediately sat up upon seeing him, her face etched with pain and guilt. "Hey," she said hesitantly. "Hey to you too. I've lost count of how many times I've visited you in a hospital for a gunshot wound. You sure seem to have 9 lives, Jake quipped. Jaden's eyes were brimming with tears as she held his gaze. "I'm sorry, Jake. It's my fault. Your child's fate is unknown. It's my fault Giselle is in that state." Jaden launched into a plea, tears streaming down her face. "Stop," Jake commanded, making her shut up. Then after a brief puzzled pause, he added, "Thank you." Jaden looked taken aback. She'd clearly been expecting him to tear her a new one. "What?" she breathed. "Thank you for helping her live long enough to find her humanity, to be mine, to give me a child." "For that, I thank you," Jake said. Charles got up and hurried to Jake's side, pulling him into a hug. "I'm fine," Jake reassured him. But Charles didn't let go, which caused Jake to start crying again. "Damn it, Charles, let go," Jake grumbled. "No," was all the response he got. It took a bit before the three of them managed to get their emotions under control. Then Jaden pulled out a bound diary from under her pillow. Holding it, she said, "This is hers if you want it." Jake hesitated, uncertain if he wanted to keep a memento from Giselle. He felt it wouldn't be fair to Christine. It was challenging enough to have a constant reminder of Julia in their lives. He didn't want Christine to find out he had kept a diary from Giselle. Charles, however, didn't hesitate. He stepped forward to accept the diary on Jake's behalf. "I'll keep it. If he doesn't want it, my godchild might," Charles said. Jake let out a shaky breath. At the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence, Aria, Nathaniel, and the others waited for the twins to return with Miss Fisher and Mr. Bradford. Nathaniel glanced at his watch. It had only been 30 minutes, but he was eager to hear the test results. "I never thought I'd see the day when Nate would turn into such a responsible family man," Ethan whispered to Alex, who chuckled. "Seriously, look at him," Ethan added. "You know he can hear you, right?" Anna whispered. "That's the point," Ethan replied. "He can't do anything to me here. He has to keep up the gentlemanly act." I almost choked at hearing gentle and Nate in the same sentence. Remember how he bullied Aria on the very first day he met her? "Talk about karma," he continued. Nathaniel chuckled despite himself. Ethan was right, he couldn't retaliate at that moment, but they would eventually leave. Nathaniel raised his eyes in Ethan's direction as Alex shook with laughter at Ethan's mock defiance. "Dude, we're in our late 20s, remember that?" Alex joked. "Tell that to that caveman over there," Ethan shot back. Laughter filled the room as everyone enjoyed the banter. Anna, sensing Aria's anxiety, moved from the couch where she had been sitting with Alex to sit beside her and took her hand. "They'll do great, you'll see. You've already done your best by giving them such intelligence," Anna reassured her. Aria gave her a grateful nod. Ethan and Alex scoffed. "You ladies always act like only mothers are responsible for a child's intelligence," Alex interjected, sounding slightly annoyed. "You can't argue with science," Anna needled with a bright smile. As the conversation went on, Nathaniel exchanged a look with Aria, aware that, like him, her thoughts were focused on their sons. He maintained eye contact and gave her a reassuring smile. "Anna's right. They've got this," he whispered reassuringly. Aria nodded, and Nathaniel's eyes dropped to her lips. The urge to kiss her grew stronger, but before he could act on it, the door opened. He stood up with Aria as Miss Fisher entered with the boys and Mr. Bradford. Nathaniel felt Aria's hand burrow into his, her nails almost biting into his skin, a clear sign of how apprehensive she was. He couldn't quite understand her anxiety. The children had done exceptionally well so far. If the second test didn't turn out favorable, they could simply stick to the required class. He gave her a sidelong glance, the corners of his eyes crinkling in a smile as he tried to ease her fears. Looking into her eyes, he silently reassured her that everything was fine. After all, they weren't even sure the boys would choose this school. Aria, meeting his gaze, could feel his silent reassurance. She wondered if she was that transparent. Then she noticed how tightly she was holding his hand. Lowering her gaze, she cursed internally, seeing the nail marks on the back of his hand. She looked up, giving him a contrite gaze as she gently brushed her fingers against the marks. Nathaniel felt a spark of desire at her touch, and Aria saw his eyes darken as he continued to peer into hers. "Mr. Hawthorne?" "Dr. Hawthorne," Miss Fisher called, interrupting their moment. "We have the test results. Would you like to see them?" she added, making them direct their attention to her. "Of course," Nathaniel replied, his voice deep and husky. Aria forced herself to focus on her boys and the administrators, trying not to dwell on how Nathaniel just made her heart leap from 0 to 100 with just a look. He'd looked at her as if he wanted to devour her. Her skin felt hot now, and her heart had begun to race, no longer because of her worry for the twins. He had interlaced his fingers with hers again, refusing to let go, even as he reached out to accept the iPad Miss Fisher handed him. Aria smiled at the twins, feeling somewhat relieved when they smiled back. The two stood beside Mr. Bradford, composed and calm. With their relaxed posture, Aria guessed there might be no need to worry, but she would always worry. Owen hated disappointing her, no matter how many times she'd told him he couldn't get it right every time. Liam was somewhat the same. They both operated on a level where they always expected to excel, and she hated seeing them down when they didn't meet their expectations. She knew they would need to toughen up eventually, but to her they were still babies and didn't need to face disappointment just yet. Ethan, Alex, Anna, and Anita gathered around Aria and Nathaniel, peering at the iPad to check the boys' scores. Anna squealed with delight, and Alex gave a thumbs up, causing the boys to beam with smiles. Anita blew them a kiss, and Ethan ignored the administrators, going over to the boys and offering them fist bumps, making the two giggle. Nathaniel exchanged a proud smile with Aria. Her heart swelled with pride as she saw the twins' scores. 99% on tests meant for second graders and 96% for third graders. The results came from a combination of assessments, standardized achievement tests, cognitive ability tests, and subject-specific placement exams. The twins had excelled in every category, surpassing the expected performance for their age group. As you can see, placing them in a class below their intellectual level wouldn't challenge them enough. So, we plan to start them in grade 3 and see how they do on the midterm test. Based on what I've observed, I think it's fair to expect them to exceed our expectations, Mrs. Fisher said. Aria's anxiety shot up. She really wasn't a fan of the word expectation at that moment. She darted a nervous glance at the twins, unsure if they were listening to the conversation, but she really didn't like the idea of placing expectations on her babies. Nathaniel didn't speak. He looked at Aria, leaving it to her. So what do you say we fill out some paperwork? I really doubt Mr. Bradford is willing to give you a chance to try other schools, Miss Fisher said, her demeanor much friendlier than it had been a few hours ago. Aria felt her heart swell with pride, knowing her boys must have done something to bring about that change. Can you, give us a moment to speak with the boys, thanks, Aria requested. Of course, Doctor, the older woman replied, then moved aside with Mr. Bradford. Aria shared a look with Nathaniel. She'd expected the woman to leave the room, but it seemed just as she had said. She wasn't willing to give them the chance to decide on another school. Aria instinctively glanced at Anita, who seemed to understand immediately. Nodding, Anita guided Anna to block the administrator's view as Aria signaled the twins to join her and Nathaniel. Liam and Owen quickly made their way across the room to their parents. I have to say this setup is quite impressive, Anita began. Hello, I'm Anna Morris of the Morris Hotels, and this is my friend, Miss Anita. We're both close friends of the Hawthornes. We'd love to hear more about Kensington Academy for Early Excellence. We know it's for exceptionally gifted children, and the students here are known to break every academic record there is, but nurturing a child involves so much more. Liam and Owen are our godsons, so you can understand why we want the very best for them, Anna said, fluttering her eyelashes and offering a bright smile. Anita nodded in agreement and added what she said. Miss Fisher flashed them a pandering smile and tried to look past them towards the corner where Aria and Nathaniel had gathered the twins, but Anita moved to block her view and met the older woman's gaze with a similarly bright smile imitating Anna. Well, of course, Miss Fisher began, her smile widening as she glanced at Mr. Bradford, who started to advance to monitor the twins. However, he was blocked by Ethan and Alex. Andrew stood on the sidelines, quietly chuckling to himself. The Kensington Academy for Early Excellence was renowned for its exceptional academic standards, consistently leading global academic competitions. Unlike typical schools for the wealthy and well-known, this institution catered specifically to the exceptionally gifted and affluent. According to Andrew's research, even the scholarship students at the academy were highly accomplished. Therefore, Miss Fisher and Mr. Bradford likely saw Liam and Owen Hawthorne as a significant opportunity. Their remarkable intelligence would enhance the school's prestige, and their age and family name added further value. Andrew understood why the administrators were so eager to accommodate them. Nathaniel held Aria's hand and guided her into a chair, then took the seat next to her as he drew Liam and Owen close, positioning the twins in front of them. Aria beamed as she cupped Liam's face and then Owen's, wanting to shower them with kisses but refraining from doing so. She recalled a time back in Sylvan Ridge when she had tried to hug them at school drop-off, only for them to step back. Her heart ached at the memory. She hadn't understood then why it was important for them to seem grown up in front of their peers, but she understood now. You two know how proud you've made us, right? Nathaniel said, tapping the twins on the tip of their noses. The twins smiled broadly. But the questions weren't that hard, Owen replied. Yeah, Mom has already taught us most of the topics, Liam added. Nathaniel chuckled and exchanged a glance with Aria, feeling immense pride in her and the impact she had on their children. I bet she did, Nathaniel said, his voice tinged with emotion. So do you like the school so far? Do you think you'll be able to handle moving up 2 grades? It's a big leap, Aria asked, her eyes darting between Owen and Liam. Her concern was evident in her soft, low voice. You always say we shouldn't back down from challenges, though, Owen replied. And as if anticipating what their mum would say next, Liam quickly added, reasonable challenges. Aria arched an eyebrow at him. Nathaniel chuckled as Liam gave his mum an adorable smile. Besides, it's just a test, Owen added. Yes, I know it's a test, but I also don't want you to feel pressured, Aria said, choosing her words carefully. What do you two think? Can you handle this testing period? Can you put in the effort without letting it get you down and accept the outcome gracefully? Nathaniel asked, understanding Aria's concern. They knew the boys were capable, but they didn't want them to get lost in academics and forget to enjoy being kids. Liam, understanding that their daddy was only voicing their mum's fears, let out a sigh, stepped forward, and held his mom's face, making her look into his eyes. Nathaniel chuckled at the gesture. "Mom, listen to me. We can do this. You don't need to worry. And if we don't do well on the exams, we can always tell Uncle Andrew to burn the school down, leaving no evidence of our defeat," Liam said with a grin. Aria gasped and Nathaniel burst out laughing. Owen chuckled and added, "He's joking, Mom." Liam started to giggle at the alarmed look in his mom's eyes. "Liam Anthony Hawthorne, what am I going to do with you?" Aria said with a fond smile, tears glistening in her eyes. Nathaniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pressed a kiss to her temple. After a few light-hearted exchanges, Nathaniel asked, "So do you like it here?" The twins nodded vigorously. "Yes, Dad. It's kind of important that we attend here now," Owen replied, a determined edge in his voice. Nathaniel's brows furrowed at the statement. "Are you sure? We still have 3 other schools to consider," Nathaniel probed. "But this is the best of them all?" Owen inquired with furrowed brows. Nathaniel nodded. "Yes, it is, son," he replied. "So then we will go here," he affirmed. "Yes," Liam supported. Aria exchanged a helpless glance with Nathaniel. He tried not to laugh, though with the way she was acting, one might think the school was about to take their babies away. "All right then, let's go rescue poor Miss Fisher from your aunties," Nathaniel quipped. Rising to his feet, Nathaniel offered a hand to Aria, helping her up. Together, they guided Liam and Owen towards the group, where Miss Fisher and Mr. Bradford were still striving to maintain their composed and professional demeanor despite the chaos surrounding them. Anna was in the midst of an animated conversation, pretending to be deeply interested in the Academy's extracurricular activities. Alex and Ethan were casually blocking Mr. Bradford's view, forcing him to crane his neck to catch a glimpse of what was happening. "Miss Fisher, Mr. Bradford," Nathaniel called out, capturing their attention. And as if on cue, the group stepped aside, creating a pathway for the administrators now. Andrew thought that was perfectly executed. "We've spoken with the boys, and they're very excited about attending Kensington. We'd like to move forward with the enrollment process," Nathaniel added. His voice was firm and authoritative as he discreetly squeezed Aria's hand. Miss Fisher's face lit up, clearly pleased with the decision. "Wonderful, let's get the paperwork started then. I'll need you to sign a few documents and we can discuss the next steps," she replied with evident relief. As they moved to a quieter part of the room to finalize everything, Aria caught Anita and Anna's eyes and mouthed, Thank you." Anita winked back and Anna quietly waved off her thanks, grinning with devilish relish. Aria turned her attention back to Miss Fisher, who was now fully engaged with the enrollment process. Looking over at Liam and Owen, Aria noticed they were chatting excitedly with Ethan and Alex, their enthusiasm practically radiating from them. She settled beside Nathaniel, watching as he began signing the necessary forms. Afterward, they were led on a tour of the facilities by Mr. Bradford. Aria discovered why students were in school despite it being a Saturday. As they walked past the school auditorium, they could hear the sounds of arguments. Mr. Bradford awkwardly explained that the students were in school for a quiz in preparation for a competition the school was set to attend in Tokyo. "We usually take a quiz to pick the best minds to represent the school," Miss Fisher added. Owen and Liam exchanged a knowing glance. Owen realized what the boys they had encountered earlier had stolen. And why? Obviously, to cheat. His brows furrowed in irritation as he wondered whether he had a moral obligation to inform Miss Fisher about what he had witnessed. As they continued down the hallway, they passed a restroom where the 2 boys, along with another, emerged. "Aren't you 3 supposed to be in the auditorium?" Miss Fisher asked, her tone strict. "We're heading back now, Miss Fisher," replied the boy who had earlier threatened Liam and Owen. Miss Fisher responded, clearly restraining herself in front of the adults. The boys walked past, but when Owen and Liam looked back, the same boy had stopped to cast a cold, threatening glance at them. "You're dead," he mouthed. Owen grinned in response while Liam simply yawned. The boys seemed clearly agitated. As one of them made a slashing gesture across his throat, Nathaniel turned back to see what had captured the boys' attention and caught sight of the gesture. His expression instantly hardened. The boys froze, realizing they had been caught before quickly fleeing. Nathaniel knelt down to meet Owen's eyes and asked, "What was that about?" Owen moved closer to his dad and whispered, "Not here, Dad. Nathaniel nodded, straightened up, and holding both boys by the hand, rejoined the others. After the tour, Miss Fisher promptly handed over school-branded supplies for Liam and Owen. Andrew stepped forward to accept the 2 bags with a brief nod. "Are we free to leave now?" Nathaniel asked. "Certainly. But when should we expect Master Liam and Master Owen?" Miss Fisher inquired. "Next week. Thank you for your time," Aria replied with a smile. "Yes, Dr. Hawthorne, I'm also eager to see you sign up for one of the committees in our Parent-Teacher Association. There's even an upcoming election for the committee presidency." "It would be wonderful to have someone of your stature involved," Miss Fisher said. Aria struggled to hide her discomfort at the suggestion. While the Parent-Teacher Associations back in Sylvan Ridge were simple affairs, it was often used as a way for people to keep tabs on other parents and indulge in gossip. Aria only attended when absolutely necessary, and it was always an unpleasant experience, with people like Pamela Harrison Graham making malicious comments and blatant jabs. She could only imagine how it might be here and doubted it would be any better, especially if it involved individuals similar to Pamela Harrison Graham. "I'll certainly try to make time," she replied, feeling a bit proud of herself for neither agreeing nor disagreeing, which she figured wouldn't be held against her. Everyone knew being a doctor wasn't an easy job. It's actually somewhat mandatory, doctor, for all parents to participate in school activities. It helps foster a sense of unity among the teachers and families of our students, Miss Fisher added. Aria fought to keep her expression neutral, suppressing the urge to glare at the woman. "Now she tells me this," she thought, irritated. "Of course," was all she could manage to say. Still preoccupied with the boys he had caught threatening his sons, Nathaniel asked, "If I may, what classes are those boys from? The ones we encountered near the restroom. I assume they're part of the school's representatives for the Tokyo contest you mentioned." Miss Fisher appeared slightly taken aback by the suggestion and quickly replied, "Oh no, that's Kevin Hatcher and his cousins. Kevin is Senator Flench Hatcher's son. He and his cousins, Tom Hatcher and Godwin Hatcher, are legacy students. They attend Kensington Academy, which is one of our subsidiary schools. While it caters to regular students, the Hatchers are here today strictly for sports, nothing more." "I see," Nathaniel remarked as Miss Fisher redirected her attention back to Aria and continued speaking. His thoughts drifted back to Senator Hatcher. He remembered the man all too well. A politician with a reputation for being crooked. One project in particular stood out in Nathaniel's mind, a large-scale healthcare initiative that Hatcher had chaired. It was supposed to revolutionize access to life-saving drugs, but instead it had become a bureaucratic nightmare. Nathaniel had been closely involved since Farmer Hawthorne was widely known for offering cheaper alternative medicines to the lower class and financially challenged individuals. For that reason, his expertise was called upon, and his company was one of those initially tapped to supply the medications. Everything had seemed promising until the wheels of corruption began to turn. He had caught wind of backdoor deals, bribes exchanged for contracts and favors. The senator had blatantly lined his pockets, ensuring that his cronies benefited while the project stalled, leaving countless lives at risk. To avoid scandal, Nathaniel had stepped in, offering a solution to the beneficiaries. However, he had been furious and had considered exposing the senator for the fraud he was, but Tom had advised him to hold back, reminding Nathaniel of why so many businesses and powerful people respected and feared his father. He was never the type to cry wolf. He waits until something insignificant becomes gold, Tom had said. Thus, instead of going public, Nathaniel had chosen to keep the information close, preserving all the evidence they'd gathered, knowing that there would come a time when it might prove useful. A man like Hatcher, with so many skeletons in his closet, was bound to make a mistake that would present an opportunity. Nathaniel mumbled under his breath, wondering if his path was going to cross that of Senator Flench Hatcher once again. Aria, realizing that Miss Fisher wasn't going to let them leave without some form of commitment, said, "I don't think being on the board or committee is for me because of my job, but I promise I'll put in the necessary work." She smiled, or at least what her facial muscles could manage as a smile. The older woman beamed with satisfaction. "Wonderful. I'll send the session schedule to the email you provided. Again, it's an honor to have you as part of the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence," Miss Fisher concluded. A few minutes later, they were out of the building and walking towards the Jeep. Aria didn't realize she was grumbling until Nathaniel pulled her to his side, chuckling as he pressed a kiss to the top of her head. She glared up at him. Anita, linked arm in arm with Aria on the other side, whispered, "Don't worry, I'll accompany you to every meeting." Aria shot her a grateful look. Nathaniel laughed softly, and Aria smacked him on the chest without even looking at him. "Will you really?" Aria replied. "If she doesn't, I will," Andrew chimed in from behind. Aria looked back, beaming at him. Nathaniel reached out to cup her jaw, guiding her gaze back to him. Leaning close to her ear, he whispered, "You are forbidden to look at any other man like that except me." Aria momentarily forgot what the discussion was about, especially when he slowly drew back, meeting her eyes intently before looking away. Her brows furrowed in bemusement. Upon reaching the house, Anna, Anita, and Aria went inside with the boys, with Anna promising to buy the twins anything they wanted. "Anything, Aunt Anna?" Liam asked, his excitement evident. "That's what I said. Anything," Anna replied. Alex and Ethan stood aside as Nathaniel walked a few meters away with Andrew. "Congratulations on the boys, boss. We're proud of them," Andrew said, making Nathaniel grin. He nodded in acknowledgement and replied, "Thank you, Andrew," as he pulled out his phone to open the gallery. "And as for the Hatcher boy, you don't need to worry. Owen and Liam are capable of handling him. And of course, either I or Charles will be there as backup," Andrew reassured him. Nathaniel paused his actions to meet the older man's gaze. "You saw him then? When he made that threatening sign?" Nathaniel probed. "Actually, it started in the examination room. I heard the boys talking in the hallway about a little mouse's snitching. Though I couldn't tell exactly what they meant, I'm sure Owen and Liam will fill us in," Andrew explained. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but he also saw the boys hiding papers in their shirts. "We'll talk to them together. I have a feeling whatever that was about is part of the reason why Owen and Liam decided on the Kensington Academy for early excellence," Nathaniel added. Andrew nodded, listening intently. "We'll get to that. First, I want you, Jake, and Tom to look into this," he said, showing Andrew a screenshot of the messages from the hospital to Aria. Andrew's brows furrowed as he read through the message. "Do you think someone is behind this?" Andrew pondered aloud. "I suspect so. It's too much of a coincidence. If something is going on, I want to know before it happens. Aria is close to her due date, and I will not have any damned soul upsetting my woman," Nathaniel said in a low growl. Andrew nodded in understanding. "I'll go find Mr. Hill," Andrew responded. Nathaniel nodded before leaving to join his friends. Charles drove Jake back to the Hawthorne estate, noticing how Jake kept his hand pressed against the breast pocket of his jacket. Charles suspected that was where he had tucked the ultrasound picture of his child. His heart constricted for him. Jake was a good man and deserved all the good life could offer, especially after the hellish childhood he'd endured, followed by the trauma they all carried from their time in the service. Charles would have given anything to change Jake's situation, and he hoped and prayed that if there was a god, angels, or any territorial being that dealt in luck and goodwill, they would do something to help him find happiness at the end of this latest ordeal. He also hoped that Christine Powell would recognize what a good man Jake was and be true to him. Charles noticed Jake glancing at the diary he'd left on the Jeep's dashboard and asked, "May I ask why you're looking at that damn diary as if it's some rattlesnake that's about to bite your ass?" Charles teased. Jake chuckled, then let out a sigh as he reached for the diary, slowly examining it. He swore Julia's scent was emanating from it, and the urge to raise the diary to his nose overwhelmed him. "I have to forget, you know. I have to move on," he rasped. Charles let out a sigh. "It's just a diary, and you're going to have a child with this woman. Putting her behind you is kinda too late, buddy. You've denied and hidden your emotions for her for too long. You loved her. She didn't deserve it. So what? She was beautiful, and you didn't know who she was when you met her. Stop beating yourself up and just let it be. Come to terms with it, Jake. Julia Davies was a part of you. She's gone, but now you'll always have a piece of her in your life. A constant reminder. Trust me, the diary is the least of your problems," Charles counseled. "I want Christine, Charles," Jake confessed. "She would be the greatest fool to refuse you." "Baggage and all," Charles replied with a hint of annoyance. Jake let out a short laugh at Charles's indignation over the idea that Christine might hold his past against him. As he opened the diary and flipped to the back, his heart skipped a beat at what he saw scribbled there. It was something he hadn't even considered, but clearly Julia had. "What?" Charles asked, catching Jake's gasp and darting a sidelong glance at him. They had just reached the concierge medical unit, and Charles parked the jeep, giving Jake his full attention. Jake slowly pulled out a small letter, written in fine cursive handwriting that he knew all too well, and handed it to Charles. "I'll be damned," Charles muttered under his breath. Julia had written a power of attorney naming Jake as the custodian of her inheritance and imploring Nathaniel Hawthorne to ensure that, in case anything happened to her, her child would inherit her property. Jake was well aware of just how much Julia Davies was worth. Tom Hill had paved the way for her to return as Giselle Davies so she could reclaim what was hers. Now that she couldn't, it made sense that her child should be able to claim the remaining Davies properties. "Will you give this to the boss?" It was addressed to him, Charles asked. "I really don't think that would be appropriate," Jake began to say. "Fine, I'll do it." "Give me that," Charles interrupted, snatching the diary from Jake and rummaging through it for any more documents they should safeguard. Jake rubbed his hands over his face, unsure how he felt about receiving Julia's money, even for their child. He had enough to take care of his child, and he felt it was absolutely unnecessary. As he dropped his hands, his eyes caught sight of a figure at the entrance of the concierge medical unit. He shut his eyes and opened them again just to be sure he wasn't hallucinating. "Shit," he muttered under his breath. "What?" Charles asked, looking up and noticing Jake's gaze fixed outside. He followed Jake's line of sight and saw Christine Powell walking towards their car. "Shit," Charles echoed. Jake took a moment to fully take in Christine Powell. She wore a fitted, elegant dress that hugged her slim frame, and her dark hair was loose in wavy curls, the tendrils cascading down her shoulders and framing her pretty face. Jake hated that his mind instinctively compared Julia and Christine, recognizing that Julia was more beautiful, but it didn't matter. As Charles had advised, Jake accepted that he cared for both women in different ways. While Julia ignited a burning desire within him, Christine evoked an entirely different and more profound emotion. What he felt for Christine was more stable and pure. He supposed that was why he could see himself building a family with her, but he wasn't sure if she felt the same way. "You know you can't just sit here and gawk at her through the windshield, right?" Charles muttered, awkwardly raising his left hand to wave at Christine. He casually put the diary away, slipping it and the letter they had found into the compartment. Jake watched as Christine approached and stood by his side of the car. He slowly rolled down the window. "Hey," he greeted, managing a slight smile. "Hey to you too, Jake." "Hello, Charles," Christine responded, her voice polite but with a hint of guardedness that neither man missed. "Welcome back to New York, Miss Powell," Charles replied. "Thank you, Charles," she said, though her eyes remained fixed on Jake, holding his gaze and studying him closely. "I'm here to see Aria," she added. "Oh, she should be back at the house with the boss," Charles informed her. "One of the guards brought me here to wait for her. I was going to take a walk when I saw your car," she explained. "Okay, give me a minute to call Andrew then," Charles said, exiting the car and leaving Jake still seated, with Christine looking at him from outside the door. "Are you just going to sit there and stare at me? Aren't you curious why I'm here?" Christine asked, a subtle crease of worry forming on her brow and a glimmer of concern in her eyes. "I'm thinking you look beautiful," Jake rasped, noticing her cheeks flush with color. She instinctively tucked a strand of hair behind her left ear, her eyes lowered. "And I'm certain if your visit had anything to do with me, you would have given me a heads up," he added in a calm, neutral tone, confident she understood his meaning by the way her eyes flicked back to meet his. "Dr. Hawthorne is your friend, isn't she?" he added. Christine held his gaze for a moment before giving a quick nod. "Could you step back a bit, please?" he asked, watching as she complied before he pushed the door open and carefully got out. He wasn't completely steady on his feet, but he managed to stand, flashed Christine a brief smile, then shut the car door and began walking toward the entrance of the concierge medical unit, Seriously, Jake? So you're not going to say anything to me? You're just going to walk away? Christine called out after him. Jake heard the pain in her voice, and it made his heart tighten painfully. He stopped, turned around, and met her gaze. The last time we talked, you asked me to give you some time to get back to me. I knew that was a brush off, and I understood that it meant you needed time to process everything. And I get that, baby. I'm not going anywhere. I want you, Christine, and this is me giving you the time and space you need. I'm not going to push you into anything you're not ready for. I wouldn't do that to you, baby. Whenever you're ready to talk or whatever, I'll be here, he rasped. Tears spilled down Christine's face, and she nodded curtly, averting her eyes. Jake turned back around and continued walking away. When he entered the unit, he saw that Sean and Mr. Samuel Cavalier were still unconscious, but Jordan, Aidan, and Anton were awake, eating in their beds. Jake noticed his own meal set out on the overhead table near his bed. His stomach grumbled with hunger. "Look who's back," Anton quipped. "We really need to find a superhero name for you, Jake, because I don't understand how you keep pulling this off." Aidan added. "Didn't you say he's a cyborg, though?" Jordan chimed in. "Ah ha ha, very funny," Jake said in a tired tone, suddenly feeling physically and emotionally drained. His heart still ached at the thought that Christine hadn't made a move to come to him. As the men continued to tease him, he settled back on the bed and reached to pull the overhead table closer. But Dr. Sterling suddenly appeared by his side, helping him slide the table over his outstretched legs. Jake looked up at her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thanks, Doc," he rasped. "You said you'd be gone for a short while." "It's been 3 hours," Dr. Sterling gently admonished. "Sorry, Doc," Jake quipped as she began checking his vitals. "Please eat." "I need to reevaluate you," she urged. Jake nodded in acknowledgement. "Yes, Mom," he rasped. Aria was enjoying lunch with the family when Andrew's call came through. Nathaniel, sitting beside her, picked up her phone, checked the caller ID, and then passed it to her. Aria's brows knitted together in confusion. She wondered if Nathaniel was aware of something she wasn't, or if he was just being helpful with the phone that was right in front of her. "Hello?" she answered, realizing it was Andrew. As he explained that Christine Powell was at the concierge medical unit, Aria mentally kicked herself. With everything that had happened recently, along with the meeting at the Kensington Academy for Early Excellence, she had completely forgotten about her plans with Christine. "Hold on, Andrew," Aria said quickly before lowering the phone and leaning toward Nathaniel. "Baby, Christine Powell is here to see me. Is it okay if I have her brought to the house?" Nathaniel shrugged, seeing no reason to object. Christine Powell wasn't a security concern, and he couldn't think of any reason she shouldn't be welcomed at the house. "Of course, babe," he replied. Aria nodded and spoke into the phone again. "Can you have Charles bring her over to the house? I'll be at the door to greet her." "No, you will not," Nathaniel murmured beside her as she ended the call and set the phone down. Aria felt his hand rest on her lap beneath the table, his fingers gently caressing her through the fabric of her sundress. She drew in a sharp breath, her gaze flickering around the table, anxious that someone might notice what Nathaniel was doing. But with his calm demeanor, no one would suspect a thing. "Mary," Nathaniel called. "Yes, sir," Mary responded, quickly stepping up behind them. "Dr. Hawthorne is expecting a guest. Meet her at the door and have someone notify Dr. Hawthorne afterward," Nathaniel directed. "Yes, sir," Mary replied, hurrying off to carry out the instructions. Nathaniel's fingers itched up her thigh. Aria let out a shaky breath. Meanwhile, back at the concierge medical unit, Charles, having received instructions to bring Christine Powell to the house, called out to her. She seemed deep in thought and was visibly startled when Charles spoke her name. His brow furrowed as he wondered why Christine appeared so tense. He knew there were unresolved issues between her and Jake, but he figured Jake was simply giving her the opportunity to take the lead. It didn't seem like something that should have her this wound up. He was grateful that his situation with Dr. Sterling wasn't nearly as complicated, though it had certainly started that way. Smiling to himself, Charles couldn't help but think how mortified he'd be if she ever discovered that their supposed spark had initially been nothing more than a distraction for Dr. Hawthorne. Their first real connection had been during a late-night stroll. a moment that had felt almost magical, as if they were the only two people awake in the world. When she stopped to ask what he wanted from her, he had kissed her again, needing to confirm the attraction he'd felt in that medical unit. The first time he'd seen Dr. Sterling was when she came to assist Julia Davies at Dr. Hawthorne's old apartment on Madison Avenue. He'd thought she was cute, but that was the extent of it. Romance had never been on his radar. His life as a bodyguard was complicated enough. He hadn't even considered the possibility until that kiss. Now, though they hadn't officially labeled their relationship after last night, he was pretty sure he could call her his girlfriend. "I just confirmed Dr. Hawthorne is at the house, and she asked me to bring you to her," Charles informed Christine. She nodded and moved toward the Jeep. Charles quickly stepped forward to open the back door for her, noticing her bag for the first time and how tightly she clutched it as if her life depended on it. He caught a glimpse of what looked like the spine of a blue folder and wondered what it could be. When they arrived at the Hawthorne house, Lewis was waiting by the front steps with Adam. As the Jeep came to a stop, Lewis approached to open the door for Christine. "Good day, madam. This way, please," he said politely. "Thank you, Lewis, but you don't have to be so formal," Christine replied with a smile. Lewis chuckled. In the foyer, Mary was there to greet her. She welcomed Christine and led her into the living room. Charles, who had followed closely behind, watched as Christine took in the elegant surroundings. He knew Christine came from old money too, but he was certain that none of Nathaniel Hawthorne's Harvard peers had the level of wealth the Hawthornes possessed. Charles moved inside the room, blending in with the decor and staying out of Christine's line of view. "Please have a seat, madam. Can I get you anything while you wait?" Mary asked. "Water would be great, thanks," Christine said, settling into a single-seater. A moment later, Aria and Nathaniel entered the room, and Christine immediately stood, still clutching her bag. "Christine, it's so nice to see you again," Aria said warmly as she walked over to embrace her. "I'm so sorry for insisting on coming over," Christine began. "Nonsense, you're always welcome here." "Right, Nathan," Aria cooed. Nathaniel hesitated until Aria shot him a pointed look. He smiled and said, "Of course." Christine sighed in relief. "I had hoped to make it to Mr. Gray's dinner to see you both there, but I was, rather indisposed that night," Christine explained. The mention of Mr. Gray made Nathaniel raise a hand to silence her. His brow furrowed as he stepped closer and asked, "Mr. Gray's dinner?" His piercing gaze bore into Christine. "Mr. Gray, the pharmacy guy, the one on your board of directors," Christine clarified, her brows knitting together. "I see. Could you tell me how you found out about Mr. Gray's dinner?" Nathaniel asked. He had no idea why Gray held a dinner or when, but he had a gut feeling that this was important. "He came over to give my grandfather an invitation. Although my grandfather couldn't attend, Mr. Gray later met with him." "Sorry, I'm babbling," Christine said, adding with a nervous laugh. "Probably because you're giving me that scary stare again." Nathaniel flashed a lopsided grin. Thank you, Christine. You're very welcome here. After all, you're Aria's and Anna's friend," he said. Christine nodded gratefully. "Excuse me, babe. There's something I need to discuss with Tom," Nathaniel said. He pressed a kiss on Aria's lips and left. Aria felt almost dazed by his sudden departure. He had stayed by her side all day, spent the entire lunchtime, turning her on in view of the entire household. Insisted on accompanying her to meet Christine, and now he was just going to up and leave like that? She sighed and turned her attention to Christine, smiling and gesturing for her to sit down, silently noting how Charles blended into the decor on the other side of the room. "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. My boys got enrolled in a school today, which took up most of our morning," Aria began, apologizing. "It's okay, I should be the one apologizing for disrupting your schedule," Christine replied. Aria noticed Christine's nervousness, her brows furrowing as she observed Christine's tight grip on her handbag. Aria assumed Christine might be nervous about revealing she couldn't be Jake's surrogate. She thought about reassuring her by mentioning that Giselle was doing well and holding on, and that all they had to do was hope she would make it a few more weeks for a safer premature delivery. But before she could speak, Christine began to talk. At that moment, Anna and Anita entered the room, causing Christine to jump to her feet and inadvertently sending her bag to the floor, its contents spilled out, including papers and a test contraption that elicited gasps from everyone. Thinking it might be a security emergency, Charles hurried across the room and saw the commotion. "Oh, damn," he muttered under his breath. Aria's eyes met Christine, and the other woman burst into tears. Shortly after, Charles headed to the concierge medical unit to fetch Jake. With his mind buzzing with possibilities, Nathaniel quickened his pace, searching for Tom. "Have you seen Tom Hill?" he asked one of the guards in the foyer as he passed by, heading toward the kitchen. "He's on the back porch, boss," the guard promptly replied. Nathaniel nodded in acknowledgement and changed direction, moving toward the porch. Bursting through the back door, he found Tom on a call with Andrew standing nearby. "Boss?" Andrew muttered to Tom, prompting the older man to turn around to face Nathaniel. "Move quickly and keep me updated before the end of today." "Yes, thanks, Paul," Tom was saying as Nathaniel approached. He then ended the call. "I have a lead." "Our dear Mr. Gray," Nathaniel announced in a deep, slightly primal tone. "Gray? The guy from the board?" Andrew asked, furrowing his brow. "Yep," Nathaniel confirmed, joining them and quickly explaining the unintended intel Christine had provided. "We all know he's been after my position for a while. What I don't understand is how he thinks targeting my wife will help him get there," Nathaniel said. "Isn't it obvious?" Tom responded, sighing in exasperation. "It's about the shares, Nathaniel. Dr. Hawthorne owns 25% of Farmer Hawthorne. If he manages to discredit her and has the audacity to demand her removal from the board, you'll have no choice but to deal with those shares," Tom explained. "Are you saying he plans to use whatever information they have on my wife to pressure me into selling her shares to them?" Nathaniel asked, his voice low and gruff. "It's possible," Tom agreed. "Or he might approach her directly, trying to convince her to sell the shares to save her hospital and protect her reputation and employees. They might even push her to sell the hospital altogether," Andrew added. "I get that they might think they can exploit her kindness, but I assure you, my Aria isn't a coward. I should know." "And she would never do anything that major without telling me," Nathaniel replied, a hint of anger in his voice. "As for the shares, I bet they don't realize we have 2 more Hawthorns on the way. Dr. Hawthorne doesn't necessarily have to keep the shares," Tom Hill said, a slow grin spreading across his face. Andrew chuckled. "Tom, we have a policy bound by honor stating that the Hawthorns must hold a certain number of shares," Nathaniel began, but Tom interrupted him. "I wrote that policy, Nate. And if you'd actually read it thoroughly," Tom started to say. "It's 1,000 pages of legal nonsense that no one bothers to read, Tom," Nathaniel retorted. "Exactly. Straight to the point. There's a clause, Nate, that if the board's integrity is in question, or if there's a threat to the Hawthorne legacy through direct or underhanded means, company espionage, or anything similar, the shares of all board members automatically revert to the living Hawthorns. "I can show you," he said, pulling out his phone. "It's on page 850, section 10, he added. Nathaniel stared at Tom in disbelief. "Why are you like this?" "I'm pretty sure my father didn't know about that clause," Nathaniel said. Andrew started laughing, especially when Tom replied, "He was all about nobility and honor. That's why he put me in charge." "He knew I didn't have a shred of honor in me," Tom quipped. Nathaniel shook his head, rubbing his hands over his face. He tried not to laugh, not wanting to seem like he approved of Tom Hill's outrageous methods, but he was grateful for him. Although they were speculating, he was relieved to know they had a legal countermeasure available. However, that still didn't protect his wife from these schemers, and the thought of Powell being involved made him uneasy. "Whatever they have planned that could stress Aria out, I want it stopped, please," Nathaniel said, looking between the 2 men. "Do you trust me or not?" Tom Hill asked. When Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, showing his hesitation and skepticism, both Tom and Andrew burst into laughter. Meanwhile, Charles entered the concierge medical unit with purposeful strides and saw that Jake had laid back on the bed. Aidan, Jordan and Anton were also resting, and Dr. Sterling had reconnected their IV lines, administering more medication. Charles went to stand at the foot of Jake's bed, catching Dr. Sterling's attention. As if she could read his mind, she immediately said, "No, he needs to rest." Charles raised a hand in a gesture of appeal. "I promise this is really important. Dr. Hawthorne wants him at the house," he explained. "The drug I gave him just knocked him out." "I doubt you can wake him up," Dr. Sterling replied with an amused smirk. "Oh, I can wake him," Charles said confidently. Dr. Sterling arched an eyebrow at him. Charles grinned. "Shall I?" he added, beaming at her. She let out a sigh of resignation and said, "You're not doing him any favors. He's going to have a massive headache. He really needs to sleep," Dr. Sterling warned. Charles nodded and teasingly said, "You might want to stand back, Doctor." Dr. Sterling rolled her eyes at him. He chuckled, his gaze drifting unconsciously to the sharp medical instruments scattered around Jake's bed. He quickly hurried over, picking them up one by one and making sure to place them far away and out of Jake's reach. Charles then positioned himself directly behind Dr. Sterling, leaving hardly any space between their bodies, and whispered, "You're still too close, baby." He heard her sharp intake of breath as he wrapped his fingers around her slim upper arms before gently moving her a bit further away from the bed. "Better," he rasped, before pressing a quick kiss to the nape of her neck, feeling her shiver before he hurried away. Returning to Jake's bedside, he glanced back at her and saw her darkened gaze following him. He winked at her, a gleam of promise in his eyes to make it up to her later. As Charles reached behind his waistband to pull out a gun, Dr. Sterling's alarm grew evident. "What are you doing?" she asked, bewildered. Charles tried not to laugh at her expression. She looked uncertain about how to react. He guessed she thought he'd gone mad and was about to shoot Jake. From the corner of his eye, he noticed her glance toward Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams, who were seated at the far end of the room behind a privacy screen with an opening that served as a doorway. Charles figured she was debating whether to call out to them or give him the benefit of the doubt. He moved closer to Jake, leaned in, and cocked the gun next to Jake's ear. The sharp, metallic click reverberated through the room. Instantly, Jake's ears pricked up. His breathing shifted from the slow rhythm of sleep to a sharp, alert intake of breath. His body tensed, muscles coiling with sudden readiness, as though every nerve in his body was electrified. Even in his drowsy state, his mind registered the familiar, unmistakable sound, and his instincts took over. As Charles pressed the barrel of the gun lightly against Jake's temple, Jake's eyelids fluttered open, darkening menacingly, pupils narrowing to slits. His entire demeanor transformed in a heartbeat from vulnerable to combat-ready, muscles taut under his skin like a predator on the verge of attack. His fists clenched by his sides and his shoulders hunched slightly as if preparing to strike or defend at a moment's notice. He was awake now, every inch of him on a high alert, as if he were ready to leap into action at the slightest provocation. The transition from sleep to awareness had been instantaneous, his body responding automatically to the sound that had wrenched him from the depths of unconsciousness. "What's the meaning of this?" Jake growled, ignoring the pounding headache that felt like a hammer wrecking his skull. "Sorry, I was desperate. There's something you need to know. It's about Christine," Charles began. Sensing the tension in Charles's voice, Jake slowly sat up, his brows furrowed. "What about Christine?" He probed, his heart instantly picking up speed. At the Hawthorne residence, Anna and Anita helped Christine sort through her belongings while Aria tried to calm her down. Mary brought in chamomile tea for everyone, and they all gathered in the living room. "I'm so sorry for being such a nervous wreck," Christine apologized yet again. Aria didn't bother dismissing her apology this time. She understood Christine's emotional state. It touched her that Christine wanted to clear the air about why she couldn't be Jake's surrogate, even if she had wanted to. Aria thought Christine must either be an evil genius or just a genuinely kind person. In her mind, a simple no would have sufficed. After all, it was Christine's body and the decision was hers to make. But seeing Christine this way, feeling guilty and emotionally distressed, showed how much she truly cared about Jake, and for Aria, that was enough. "When did you find out?" Anita asked kindly. "Find out about what?" Nathaniel asked as he strolled in, followed by Ethan, Alex, Andrew, and Tom. Christine exchanged a helpless look with Aria, who reached out to hold her hand. Anita and Anna got up to stand by the chair where Christine and Aria sat, showing silent solidarity. "What did you ladies do to Christine? I've never seen her cry," Ethan quipped, but his joke was met with absolute silence. Nathaniel's gaze shifted from Christine to Aria, then back to Christine, his left eyebrow lifting in confusion. Just then, Jake entered, followed by Charles, drawing everyone's attention. "Shouldn't you be in bed, Jake?" Nathaniel asked with concern. Christine's brows furrowed at Nathaniel's comment, and Jake didn't miss the concerned look she gave him, which overshadowed the helplessness he had seen there before. "I was told I'm needed here, boss," Jake said, his eyes on Christine. He couldn't believe what Charles had told him, and needed to hear it from her directly. "Baby?" Aria called to Nathaniel, gesturing for him to come closer. Nathaniel complied, taking her hand and helping her up. Charles stood beside Tom Hill and passed Julia's letter to him. Tom accepted it with furrowed brows. "I think we need to give Christine and Jake some privacy," Aria suggested. Nathaniel's brows furrowed as he continued to search her gaze, wondering what all the secrecy was about. Had Christine done something to Jake? Aria noticed Nathaniel's cold glance in Christine's direction and reached up to cup his jaw, making him meet her gaze. "Let's go to the kitchen," she said firmly. Nathaniel arched an eyebrow at her in silent defiance, but then wrapped an arm around her back and guided her toward the exit. Anna, Anita, Alex, Ethan, Tom, Charles, and Andrew followed them out. But in the foyer, Tom pulled Charles aside to discuss the letter he'd passed to him earlier. "We've installed the back porch outdoor settee, Dr. Hawthorne. It might be a good time to check it out," Andrew suggested. "Oh!" Anita, Anna, and Aria exclaimed before rushing toward the back porch. Nathaniel didn't recall seeing anything extraordinary on the back porch earlier, but then he had been focused on finding Tom Hill. Following the delighted squeals of the women, Nathaniel, along with Andrew, Ethan, and Alex, stepped out back and saw that the left corner of the neatly trimmed lawn now featured a setup of a couch designed in the form of a dragon curling around, with its head hovering at the center, and an outdoor fire pit just beneath its jaw. "Okay, that's cool," Ethan remarked. "Whose idea was this?" Nathaniel asked, clearly impressed with the dragon aesthetic. The open jaw even had embers of fire shimmering in its depth, making it look quite realistic. "Dr. Hawthorne's, boss. Part of the plans for the bachelorette party," Andrew replied, a note of amusement in his voice. "Ah, I forgot that was still happening," Nathaniel replied. Then he turned to Andrew and asked, "I suppose you have information about the lady's decision to hire strippers?" Andrew chuckled. "Yes, boss. Dr. Hawthorne is planning on using the Marquis Club." Nathaniel's eyes darkened in irritation. The Marquis Club wasn't just any place with male strippers. It was a high-end club where men of high caliber played out steamy fantasies behind leather masks, seducing women for kicks. Nathaniel had first heard about the club when one of his business associates from Dubai had asked if he had ever given in to the temptation of trying it out. Back then, Nathaniel had been open-minded about it. It hadn't meant anything to him, nor had it affected him in any way, but now he found that he hated the idea of the club with a passion. "Nate had the idea of us sabotaging that and turning up as the strippers. I think it would be nice to see their pretty little faces when they find out," Alex said in a low voice. Ethan chuckled. "I don't think the Marquis is going to like getting cancelled on at the last minute." Andrew mused aloud with amusement. "Nobody cares what he thinks. He will get paid nonetheless," Nathaniel replied, with a tinge of annoyance. He watched as Aria and the others goofed around, testing out the outdoor settee, a slow smile spreading across his face. The idea of strip-teasing for Aria was already exciting him. He grinned with devilish relish. Forcing his mind back to the issue with Christine, he turned to face Andrew again. "Do you know what's going on with Christine?" he asked. Andrew smiled and filled him in. "What?" Nathaniel asked in a low, quiet tone. "That dog," Ethan said with a note of pride. "But it's good news." Why then was she crying? "I thought she loved him," Alex mused aloud. In the living room, Christine slowly stood up, locking eyes with Jake as her beautiful eyes darted nervously. "I didn't know how to tell you, especially after you told me about your ex. It just feels weird to tell you now, after everything. I swear to you, Jake, I didn't do this to trap you or anything. I was using contraception. I have the proof here to show you," Christine began, tears streaming down her face as she pulled out a folder with trembling hands. "I need to hear you say it, babe," Jake rasped, taking a step forward. Christine let out a shaky breath. "Jake?" she whispered fervently. "Tell me, please," he urged, his voice raw with emotion. "I'm pregnant, Jake. It happened at the reunion," she said, her voice trembling. "I swear I took precautions." Jake crossed the room, cupped her face, and covered her lips with his, causing Christine to drop the folder and papers in her hands as he kissed her passionately. "Would you consider marrying me for real, knowing there's a possibility I come with an infant?" Jake asked in a low, gruff tone, stopping the kiss to press his forehead against hers. "I want forever, baby," he rasped.